human mechanism for dissecting systemic deceptions, where intricate layers of hidden motives and cascade through varied stages of influence, creating a rich tapestry of interpretive possibilities. Introspective ideas highlight the human condition as a perpetual quest for comprehension, with individuals crafting personal frameworks to navigate existence amid veiled realities that obscure authentic insight and foster a relentless pursuit of clarity. Conspiracy theories function as analytical blueprints, mapping the progression from motivational inputs to revelatory outputs through focal events that serve as catalysts for deeper exploration. They dismantle the facade of official accounts, which rely on partial disclosures to perpetuate control and suppress alternative perspectives. By integrating scientific dimensions such as entropy in information flow and mathematical models of network propagation, conspiracy theories assert their role as superior pathways to truth, offering a comprehensive lens through which to view the intricate interplay of human and systemic forces. This exploration delves into these dimensions through structured analyses, each plunging into conceptual depths to demonstrate how conspiracy theories transcend superficial explanations, providing profound insights into the complexities that shape human experience and challenge institutional dominance. The potency of conspiracy theories resides in their ability to address the voids left by incomplete official narratives, a reality reinforced by historical instances where deliberate obfuscation has been unmasked to reveal systemic deceit that undermines public trust. This multidimensional framework unites diverse human experiences, spanning individual introspection to collective skepticism, forging a resilient structure for challenging the authoritative constructs that shape societal understanding and resist transparency. Parameters of formation extend beyond mere observation, encompassing the emotional resilience required to confront uncertainty.
Subversive literature, spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires steeped in magic and demonology to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge,
while the introspective nature of their development highlights their dual significance to individuals and collectives, fostering a shared journey toward enlightenment amid systemic resistance. By serving as blueprints,
subversive literature, spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires steeped in magic and demonology to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge, wove intricate rituals to connect with spiritual realms, naming demons and prescribing spells to harness unseen forces, driven by a belief in metaphysical realities. As society progressed, bolstered by scientific advances and a deeper grasp of human nature, subversive thought pivoted toward socio-political critiques, addressing class, gender, and institutional power with analytical rigor. This transformation mirrors a broader cultural shift from mystical speculation to material analysis, as Enlightenment ideals, industrialization, and modern psychology reshaped subversive discourse. Yet, a counterpoint persists. Did earlier texts possess authentic spiritual insights, derived from oral traditions or mystical experiences, that modern rationalism has overlooked? This essay examines this evolution through a chronological analysis of subversive texts, weaving their themes, mystical power, social justice, ideological extremism, into a narrative of intellectual transformation. It explores why subversive literature shifted from spells and demons to social and political theories, considering whether past authors tapped into a lost spiritual knowledge or merely reflected their era's ignorance of nature, and how these works influenced both popular culture and subcultures, shaping modern thought. The texts, ranging from medieval grimoires to revolutionary treatises, embody a spectrum of subversive intent. Early works like the Sworn Book of Honorius and the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic catalogue demons like Astaroth or Beelzebub, detailing rituals believed to summon them, rooted in a worldview where spiritual forces governed reality. Their intricate spells, drawn from oral traditions or religious syncretism, suggest either profound mystical insight understanding of human behavior. This evolution suggests that increased knowledge of nature and society redirected subversive energy toward tangible change, yet the counterpoint lingers. Did medieval authors, with their demon hierarchies and rituals, access a spiritual reality now dismissed? The interplay between popular culture, which subversive literature, spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires steeped in magic and demonology to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge, wove intricate rituals to connect with spiritual realms, naming demons and prescribing spells to harness unseen forces, driven by a belief in metaphysical realities. As society progressed, bolstered by scientific advances and a deeper grasp of human nature, subversive thought pivoted toward socio-political critiques, addressing class, gender, and institutional power with analytical rigor. This transformation mirrors a broader cultural shift from mystical speculation to material analysis, as Enlightenment ideals, industrialization, and modern psychology reshaped subversive discourse. Yet, a counterpoint persists. Did earlier texts possess authentic spiritual insights, derived from oral traditions or mystical experiences, that modern rationalism has overlooked? This essay examines this evolution through a chronological analysis of subversive texts, weaving their themes, mystical power, social justice, ideological extremism, into a narrative of intellectual transformation. It explores why subversive literature shifted from spells and demons to social and political
Pathways from
theories,
motivational inputs
considering
to
whether
revelatory
past authors
outputs.
tapped into a lost spiritual knowledge or merely reflected their era's ignorance of nature, and how these works influenced both popular culture and subcultures, shaping modern thought. The texts, ranging from medieval grimoires to revolutionary treatises, embody a spectrum of subversive intent. Early works like the Sworn Book of Honorius and the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic catalogue demons like Astaroth or Beelzebub, detailing rituals believed to summon them, rooted in a worldview where spiritual forces governed reality. Their intricate spells, drawn from oral traditions or religious syncretism, suggest either profound mystical insight or a lack of natural understanding. As scientific inquiry grew, texts like the Communist Manifesto and Rules for Radicals shifted focus to societal structures, analyzing power through economics and activism, reflecting a maturing understanding of human behavior. This evolution suggests that increased knowledge of nature and society redirected subversive energy toward tangible change, yet the counterpoint lingers. Did medieval authors, with their demon hierarchies and rituals, access a spiritual... Subversive literature, spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires, steeped in magic and demonology, to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge, wove intricate rituals to connect with spiritual realms, naming demons and prescribing spells to harness unseen forces, driven by a belief in metaphysical realities. As society progressed, bolstered by scientific advances and a deeper grasp of human nature, subversive thought pivoted toward socio-political critiques, addressing class, gender, and institutional power with analytical rigor. This transformation mirrors a broader cultural shift from mystical speculation to material analysis, as Enlightenment ideals, industrialization, and modern psychology reshaped subversive discourse. Yet, a counterpoint persists. Did earlier texts possess authentic spiritual insights, derived from oral traditions or mystical experiences, that modern rationalism has overlooked? This essay examines this evolution through a chronological analysis of subversive texts, weaving their themes, mystical power, social justice, ideological extremism, into a narrative of intellectual transformation. It explores why subversive literature shifted from spells and demons. Spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires, steeped in magic and demonology, to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge, wove intricate rituals to connect with spiritual realms, naming demons and prescribing spells to harness unseen forces, driven by a belief in metaphysical realities. As society progressed, bolstered by scientific advances and a deeper grasp of human nature, subversive thought pivoted toward socio-political critiques, addressing class, gender, and institutional power with analytical rigor. This transformation mirrors a broader cultural shift from mystical speculation to material analysis, as Enlightenment ideals, industrialization, and modern psychology reshaped subversive discourse. Subversive literature, spanning the 13th to 20th centuries, traces a remarkable evolution from esoteric grimoires, steeped in magic and demonology, to modern manifestos dissecting social dynamics and power structures, reflecting humanity's shifting understanding of the world and itself. Early texts, crafted in an era of limited scientific knowledge, wove intricate rituals to connect with spiritual realms, naming demons and prescribing spells to harness unseen forces, driven by a belief in metaphysical realities. As society progressed,
Satanism, as a theological and philosophical construct, stands as a deliberate counterpoint to Christian. Satanism, as a theological and philosophical construct, stands as a deliberate counterpoint to Christian orthodoxy, embodying a spectrum of beliefs that challenge divine authority and human moral constraints. Its central theme revolves around the veneration or symbolic use of Satan, a figure rooted in Christian cosmology, to reject established religious norms and assert individual autonomy. This rejection is not merely a reaction but a purposeful inversion of Christian principles, emphasizing the individual's right to define their moral and spiritual path. Unlike Christianity, which coalesces around the Holy Bible's divine revelation and eschatological promise of salvation through Jesus Christ, Satanism lacks a unified scripture or singular purpose. Instead, it manifests in diverse forms, ranging from atheistic philosophies that prioritize earthly power and self-determination to theistic worship that seeks alignment with a reinterpreted infernal realm. This absence of a definitive satanic text, analogous to the Christian canon, underscores the fragmented nature of satanic ideology. The lack of a singular authoritative scripture results in a fluid and varied belief system, shaped by historical accusations of diabolism, modern provocations against religious norms, and speculative eschatologies that imagine alternative cosmic outcomes. This essay critically examines Satanism's theological underpinnings, focusing on its historical evolution, philosophical diversity, and contrast with Christian theology. The exploration is structured to illuminate how Satanism positions itself as a radical alternative to Christian doctrine. Satanism's allure lies in its audacious rejection of Christian morality, offering a liberating, albeit perilous, alternative to divine submission. This liberation is framed as a reclaiming of personal power, where the individuals will supersede the constraints imposed by divine authority. By exploring Satanism's precursors, from ancient dualism to modern movements, this analysis reveals its complex interplay with concepts of good and evil. In ancient dualistic traditions, such as Zoroastrianism, the struggle between opposing forces of light and darkness prefigured Satanism's later emphasis on rebellion against a singular divine good. Modern Satanism, particularly in its organized forms, builds on this foundation, positioning Satan as the apex of rebellion against God's ultimate goodness as defined by Christian theology. The hierarchy of supernatural entities, from Satan to God, further illuminates this inversion. Christianity frames Satan as the embodiment of evil, a fallen angel who opposes God's divine order and tempts humanity towards sin. In contrast, Satanism reinterprets Satan as a symbol of defiance or, in some cases, a deity worthy of veneration, representing the pursuit of knowledge, power, and autonomy. This essay delves into four key aspects: the historical roots of satanic thought, tracing its origins through medieval accusations of witchcraft and heresy to the formalized satanic movements of the 20th century; the philosophical and spiritual diversity of modern Satanism, encompassing both the atheistic Church of Satan and theistic groups that view Satan as a divine entity; the role of supernatural entities in satanic and Christian cosmologies, highlighting how each system assigns meaning to figures like Satan and God; and the theological contrast between Satanism and Christianity's eschatological vision, particularly in their differing views on salvation, judgment, and the afterlife. Through these lenses, Satanism emerges as a multifaceted challenge to divine authority, rooted in the human desire for autonomy and power. Yet, it remains tethered to the Christian framework it seeks to defy, as its very existence depends on the oppositional dynamic with Christian cosmology. This paradox underscores Satanism's complexity, as it simultaneously rejects and relies on the theological structures it critiques, creating a dynamic interplay between rebellion and dependence. Part 1. Historical Roots of Satanic Thought. Satanism's formal emergence in the 1960s with Anton LaVey's founding of the Church of Satan belies its deeper historical roots in a variety of movements that consistently oppose divine authority. These precursors, spanning centuries and cultures, laid the intellectual and theological groundwork for what would later be recognized as modern Satanism. In ancient Zoroastrianism, dating to approximately 1500 BCE, the deity Angra Mainyu stood in opposition to Ahura Mazda, embodying chaos in a cosmic struggle against order. This dualistic framework, where opposing forces shaped the universe, was later interpreted by Christian theologians as analogous to the relationship between Satan and God, casting Angramenu as a proto-satanic figure. Similarly, Gnostic sects flourishing between the 1st and 4th centuries revered figures such as the serpent in the Book of Genesis, viewing it as a bringer of knowledge and liberation against a tyrannical demiurge who sought to suppress human potential. These sects faced accusations of devil worship from early Christians, who saw their reverence for such figures as a direct challenge to divine authority. In the medieval period, from the 11th to 13th centuries, heretical groups like the Cathars and Bogomils further developed ideas that resonated with later satanic thought. These groups viewed the material world as inherently evil, a creation of a malevolent deity, and regarded Lucifer as a potential liberator from this corrupt existence. The Catholic Church, perceiving these beliefs as a threat to its orthodoxy, labeled these groups as diabolists, accusing them of aligning with Satan. This pattern of condemnation continued during the witchcraft accusations of the 13th to 17th centuries, where folk healers, pagans, and others were falsely cast as Satan worshippers. Texts like the Malleus Maleficarum of 1486, a treatise on witchcraft, formalized these accusations, portraying such individuals as part of a satanic conspiracy against Christian order. These accusations, though largely fabricated, contributed to the cultural perception of Satan as a figure associated with rebellion and opposition to divine rule. During the Renaissance, occultists furthered this narrative by engaging with demonic entities within a Christian framework. Grimoires such as the Lesser Key of Solomon provided rituals for invoking demons, which, while still operating within a Christian cosmology, reinforced perceptions of diabolism as a challenge to divine authority. By the 19th century, Romantic poets like John Milton and Lord Byron elevated Satan to a heroic figure in works such as Paradise Lost. In these literary works, Satan was portrayed as a rebel against divine tyranny, a symbol of defiance and individualism that resonated with emerging ideas of personal autonomy. This literary glorification laid significant groundwork for modern Satanism's emphasis on symbolic rebellion against established religious norms. The 19th century also saw the rise of Theosophy, founded in 1875 by Helena Blavatsky, and early Luciferianism, which reframed Lucifer as a symbol of enlightenment and intellectual freedom rather than evil. These movements influenced 20th century satanic thought by emphasizing the pursuit of knowledge and self-empowerment over submission to divine will. These precursors, whether labeled as heresy, diabolism, or black magic, were not self-identified as Satanism but collectively shaped its ideology by consistently challenging the divine order upheld by Christianity. This disposition celebrates this lineage as a testament to human defiance, rejecting Christian subjugation in favor of a theology centered on self-empowerment and autonomy. Unlike Christianity, which developed a unified canon through centuries of ecclesiastical councils, these disparate movements lacked the institutional cohesion to produce a singular authoritative text. As a result, Satanism remains a fragmented yet persistent counterpoint to divine authority, drawing from a diverse array of historical and philosophical threads that underscore its commitment to rebellion and individual sovereignty. Part 2. Philosophical and Spiritual Diversity of Modern Satanism. Modern Satanism, formalized in the 1960s through Anton LaVey's establishment of the Church of Satan, encompasses a broad spectrum of beliefs, ranging from atheistic philosophies to theistic worship, all unified by their shared rejection of Christian morality. This diversity reflects Satanism's core commitment to challenging divine authority and embracing individual autonomy, manifesting in varied interpretations of Satan's role and significance. The Church of Satan, as articulated in LaVey's The Satanic Bible of 1969, promotes Satan as a symbol of individualism and hedonism, prioritizing earthly pleasure and rational skepticism over spiritual concerns. This atheistic approach positions Satan as a metaphor for human desire and self-empowerment, rejecting the Christian emphasis on spiritual salvation in favor of a life centered on personal fulfillment and intellectual freedom. LaVey's philosophy encourages adherents to embrace their natural instincts, viewing Christian morality as a restrictive force that stifles human potential. In contrast, the Satanic Temple, founded in 2013, employs Satan as a metaphor for rebellion against authoritarianism, advocating for social justice and secularism through its 7 fundamental tenets. This organization focuses on activism, using satanic imagery to challenge oppressive religious and political structures, thereby aligning Satanism with broader societal goals rather than personal indulgence. Theistic Satanists, such as those associated with groups like the Joy of Satan or the Temple of the Blacklight, take a different approach, worshipping Satan as a literal deity. These groups often equate Satan with pre-Christian figures such as Enki or Lucifer, seeking spiritual power or an alternative afterlife distinct from Christian promises of salvation. For these practitioners, Satan represents a divine force of liberation and enlightenment, offering a spiritual path that contrasts sharply with Christian theology. Luciferianism, a related but distinct movement, venerates Lucifer as a light-bringer, emphasizing gnosis and self-deification. Unlike Christian portrayals of Lucifer as an embodiment of evil, Luciferianism reinterprets this figure as a symbol of knowledge and personal transformation, distancing itself from the negative connotations imposed by Christian doctrine. Meanwhile, the Order of the Nine Angles, emerging in the 1960s, adopts a radical and amoral philosophy, using Satan to symbolize chaos and evolution through taboo practices. This group's esoteric approach pushes boundaries, embracing controversial methods to achieve spiritual and existential growth, further highlighting the diversity within modern Satanism. These diverse strands, atheistic, theistic, and esoteric, reflect Satanism's lack of a unified goal. Some groups, like the Church of Satan, prioritize earthly dominance and personal empowerment, while others, such as theistic sects, focus on spiritual rebellion and alternative cosmologies. This posture lauds this diversity as a strength, offering multiple paths to reject Christian guilt and embrace human potential. Unlike Christianity's cohesive eschatology, centered on salvation through Jesus Christ, Satanism's fragmented ideologies prevent the development of a singular scripture. Groups like the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple explicitly reject rigid dogma, favoring flexibility and individual interpretation, while theistic sects produce disparate, often secretive texts that lack the universal authority of the Christian Bible. This diversity, rooted in historical accusations of diabolism and occult practices, underscores Satanism's appeal as a liberating alternative to divine submission. However, its lack of unity hinders the creation of a canonical text akin to the Bible, as each faction prioritizes its own philosophical or spiritual framework. This fragmentation, while a source of ideological richness, ensures that Satanism remains a decentralized movement, unified only by its opposition to Christian orthodoxy and its celebration of human autonomy over divine authority. Part 3. Supernatural entities in Satanic and Christian cosmologies. Satanism and Christianity present starkly contrasting hierarchies of supernatural entities, reflecting their fundamentally divergent perspectives on the nature of good and evil. In Christian theology, Satan is depicted as the chief adversary, a fallen angel who leads a host of demons in tempting humanity towards sin, ultimately destined for eternal punishment in hell, as described in Revelation 12 verse 9 and Matthew 25 verse 41. Within this framework, demons, fallen angels, and the Antichrist collectively embody evil, standing in direct opposition to God's divine order. In contrast, angels, saints, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, and God represent the ultimate goodness, upholding a cosmic hierarchy where divine authority reigns supreme. Satanism, however, inverts this hierarchy, elevating Satan as a liberator or a potent symbol of rebellion against divine constraints. For theistic Satanists, demons may serve as potential allies, revered as spiritual entities that aid in the pursuit of power or enlightenment. For atheistic Satanists, demons function as metaphors, representing human instincts or forces of chaos that challenge Christian moral restrictions. This inversion of roles draws on historical precursors like Gnosticism and Catharism, which similarly revered figures akin to Satan. These movements viewed the Christian God as a false demiurge, a tyrannical creator of a flawed material world, and elevated figures like the serpent or Lucifer as bringers of knowledge and liberation. This reinterpretation of supernatural entities aligns with Satanism's broader rejection of Christian moral categories, reframing traditional notions of evil as opportunities for empowerment. Beyond Satan and demons, other supernatural entities from various cultural traditions further illustrate this contrast. Entities such as jinn in Islamic tradition, Wendigos in Native American lore, and trickster deities like Loki in Norse mythology occupy ambiguous roles, often neutral or context-dependent in their native frameworks. However, Christian theology frequently demonizes these figures, equating them with satanic forces to reinforce its binary of good versus evil. Similarly, entities like ghosts, vampires, and cryptids, while not explicitly biblical, are sometimes linked to demonic influence in Christian fringe perspectives, where they are seen as manifestations of evil or spiritual corruption. Satanists, by contrast, may interpret these entities as symbols of chaos or power, aligning them with their broader celebration of rebellion and autonomy. Folklore-based beings such as fairies, gnomes, and elementals, which are typically neutral in their original cultural contexts, are often equated with demons in Christian interpretations, further illustrating the tendency to categorize ambiguous entities as evil. In modern contexts, aliens, speculated by some Christians to be interdimensional beings or demons masquerading as extraterrestrials, are viewed by certain Satanists as cosmic rebels, embodying defiance against established cosmic orders. This inclination champions Satanism's elevation of Satan and demons as emblems of freedom, rejecting the Christian demonization of neutral or ambiguous entities from diverse traditions. By redefining these figures as symbols of empowerment, Satanism challenges the Christian narrative that casts them as threats to divine order. This theological audacity underscores Satanism's appeal, as it transforms the concept of evil into a force for liberation against what it perceives as divine tyranny. However, this inversion also reveals Satanism's reactive nature, as its redefinition of supernatural entities remains heavily reliant on the Christian imagery and cosmology it seeks to oppose. This dependence limits Satanism's ability to fully break free from the Christian framework, as its very identity is shaped by its opposition to the divine hierarchy it critiques. The interplay between these contrasting cosmologies highlights Satanism's complex relationship with Christian theology, simultaneously rejecting and engaging with the supernatural entities that define both systems. Part 4. Theological Contrast with Christianity's Eschatology. Christianity's eschatology, centered on the promise of salvation through Jesus Christ and the prospect of eternal life in heaven, stands in stark opposition to Satanism's diverse visions, which emphasize earthly power or alignment with an infernal realm. The Holy Bible, meticulously compiled through centuries of ecclesiastical councils, portrays God as the ultimate good, offering redemption to humanity through faith, as articulated in John 3 verse 16. Within this framework, hell is depicted as a place of eternal punishment for those who reject God's divine will, with Satan cast as its defeated ruler, destined for ultimate subjugation, as described in Revelation 20 verse 10. This eschatological narrative underscores Christianity's emphasis on divine grace and submission to God's authority as the path to salvation, framing Satan as the embodiment of rebellion and failure. Satanism, in its various forms, fundamentally rejects this Christian narrative, offering alternative perspectives that prioritize individual autonomy over divine submission. Atheistic groups, such as the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple, explicitly deny the existence of an afterlife, focusing instead on earthly autonomy and rebellion against Christian moral constraints. For these groups, Satan serves as a symbol of human potential and defiance, rejecting the Christian promise of eternal life in favor of a life centered on personal empowerment and rational self-interest. Theistic Satanists, such as those affiliated with the Joy of Satan, present a different perspective, reinterpreting hell not as a place of punishment but as Satan's realm of power and liberation. This view aligns with historical dualisms, such as Catharism, which similarly challenged Christian orthodoxy by positing a cosmic struggle between opposing forces, with figures akin to Satan representing freedom from a tyrannical divine order. This contrast reflects Satanism's broader rejection of Christian guilt and submission, prioritizing the individual's will over the concept of divine grace. The advocacy exalts Satanism's defiance as a form of liberation from what it perceives as an oppressive Christian theology, offering a compelling path for those disillusioned with the promises of salvation and eternal reward. By rejecting the Christian narrative of redemption, Satanism appeals to those who seek to define their own moral and existential purpose, free from the constraints of divine judgment. Christianity's unified canon, supported by divine revelation and institutional authority, stands in sharp contrast to Satanism's fragmented texts. While Christianity's Bible was formalized through councils like the Council of Carthage, Satanism lacks a comparable unifying authority or shared revelation. Its texts range from Anton LaVey's philosophical The Satanic Bible, which outlines a rationalist and hedonistic worldview, to esoteric grimoires used by theistic sects, which often remain secretive and lack universal acceptance. The absence of a satanic council or centralized doctrine prevents the emergence of a cohesive scripture, leaving Satanism as a collection of disparate ideologies united primarily by their opposition to Christian theology. This fragmentation underscores Satanism's appeal as a radical alternative, as it allows for diverse interpretations that cater to individual desires for autonomy and rebellion. However, this reliance on Christian imagery, particularly the figure of Satan, a product of biblical cosmology, reveals Satanism's reactive nature. While it seeks to subvert Christian eschatology, Satanism remains bound to the very framework it opposes, as its identity and symbolism are deeply rooted in the Christian narrative it critiques. This theological opposition highlights Satanism's audacity in redefining divine concepts, yet its dependence on biblical imagery limits its ability to fully break free from the Christian cosmology, creating a dynamic interplay between rebellion and reliance on the system it seeks to challenge. Conclusion: Satanism's paradox. Rebellion within Christianity's framework. Satanism emerges as a theological and philosophical force that challenges Christian orthodoxy, offering a spectrum of beliefs from earthly rebellion to spiritual defiance. Its historical roots, from Zoroastrian dualism's cosmic struggle between Angra Mainyu and Ahura Mazda to medieval accusations of diabolism against heretics and alleged witches, reveal a persistent human impulse to reject divine authority. These historical threads, shaped by accusations of heresy and rebellion, crystallized in modern movements like the Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey in the 1960s, and the Satanic Temple, established in 2013, which formalized Satanism as a structured counterpoint to Christian norms. The philosophical diversity of Satanism, encompassing atheistic hedonism, theistic worship, and esoteric rebellion, provides multiple paths for rejecting Christian morality. The Church of Satan's emphasis on earthly pleasure, as articulated in the Satanic Bible, contrasts with theistic groups like the Joy of Satan, which venerates Satan as a deity, while esoteric factions like the Order of the Nine Angles embrace chaos as a means of evolution. This fragmentation, while offering varied expressions of defiance, prevents a unified canon akin to the Holy Bible, which was solidified through Christian councils. The hierarchy of supernatural entities in Satanism and Christianity underscores their theological opposition. Christianity casts Satan as the chief adversary, a fallen angel embodying evil, while God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit represent ultimate goodness. Satanism inverts this hierarchy, elevating Satan as the apex of rebellion, either as a symbol of human empowerment for atheistic adherents or a divine liberator for theistic ones. This redefinition transforms Christian notions of evil into emblems of autonomy, aligning with historical precursors like Gnosticism and Catharism, which challenged the Christian God as a false demiurge. Christianity's eschatology, centered on salvation through faith in Jesus Christ and eternal life in heaven, contrasts sharply with Satanism's varied visions, which prioritize earthly power or a reimagined hell as a realm of liberation rather than punishment. This opposition highlights Satanism's appeal as an alternative to divine submission, offering paths for those who reject Christian promises of redemption. Satanism's disposition exalts its defiance as a liberation from the oppressive yoke of Christian guilt, emphasizing a theology that prioritizes autonomy and power. The absence of a singular satanic scripture, resulting from a lack of centralized authority, historical depth, and cultural acceptance, reinforces its status as a fragmented yet potent counterpoint to Christianity. Unlike the Bible, supported by councils like Carthage, Satanism's texts, from LaVey's philosophical writings to secretive theistic grimoires, lack cohesion, reflecting its decentralized nature. By embracing Satan as a symbol or deity, Satanism invites adherents to forge their own destinies, whether through earthly dominance or spiritual alignment with an infernal realm. This theological spectrum, spanning rebellion against divine order to the redefinition of cosmic hierarchies, reveals Satanism's enduring significance as a radical rejection of Christian hegemony. Satanism's internal perspective champions this defiance as a triumph of human will, offering a perilous yet liberating path for those who dare to reject divine authority. While the essay itself seeks to understand and analyze this challenge within its historical, philosophical, and theological contexts, illuminating its complex interplay with the Christian framework it opposes.
Get ready, you bold troublemakers. This is the raw, unfiltered plunge into Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, served up hot in his own street smart, in-your-face style, packed with punch and defiance. This ain't no soft read. It's the whole damn blueprint, summarized and boiled down to its bones. The dedication kicks it off with a cheeky nod to Lucifer, the first rebel, setting a provocative tone to rattle the cages. The preface roars a call to arm the have-nots against the haves with real, dirty tools. The prologue lays bare a corrupt world, demanding action over talk. Then come the chapters, 10 gritty lessons on seizing power, from listening to tactics, proxies, and building unstoppable movements. Dig in, or get left behind. Dedication. To Irene, my steadfast muse, and a sly nod to Lucifer, the original rebel who spat in the face of the divine order and snagged his own infernal kingdom. This ain't just a sweet scribble. It's a bold, cheeky gauntlet thrown down, signaling trouble for the status quo. Alinsky's not here to sip tea with the elite. He's kicking over their tables, stirring the pot with a grin. This dedication sets the stage, provocative, unapologetic, and dripping with defiance. It's a rallying cry for the restless, a promise that power's up for grabs if you've got the guts to take it. Get ready to rumble. Preface. This ain't no dry textbook for cloistered dreamers lost in their ivory towers. Alinsky lays it bare. This is a gritty manual for the have-nots, arming them with real, blood-and-sweat tools to slug it out with the haves. He's writing for the fighters, the ones sick of empty talk and ready to seize change with both hands. The world's a dirty, tangled mess, and power's no cleaner. Deal with it. He snarls. No sugarcoating, no hand-holding. Just a straight shot of strategy for those who dare. This preface is your wake-up slap. Step into the arena or get trampled by the system. Prologue. Alinsky rips the veil off the world's ugly truth. Corruption festers, inequality reigns, and the system's a rigged game for the powerful elite. He's not here peddling some romantic revolution for kicks. This is a lifeline for the desperate, a playbook for those forced to fight back. No high-minded theorizing. Organizing is the meat of it, the only way to crack the haves' grip. The streets are a battlefield, and the powerless need weapons, not sermons. This prologue is your battle cry, a no-nonsense call to arms for anyone ready to turn rage into results. Get moving or stay a victim. Chapter 1. The purpose. Power's the prize, the only currency that matters in this brutal game. Alinsky's mission is crystal clear. Hand the powerless the keys to snatch it from the haves' greedy fists. Forget ideology, communism, socialism, it's all hot air. He's after results, the kind that come from action, not endless debates in smoky rooms. Change doesn't trickle down, it's ripped from the top. This chapter is your war drum, beating the rhythm of resistance. The haves won't yield without a fight, so organize, agitate, and win. No excuses. Power waits for those bold enough to claim it. Chapter 2. Of means and ends. Morality's a fine luxury when you're not scraping by on crumbs. Alinsky cuts through the sanctimonious fog. Ends justify means when survival's on the line. He lays out 11 hard-edged rules to wade through the ethical swamp, from bending rules to outlasting foes with cunning. It's a rough road, but it's real. The haves play dirty, and the have-nots must match their grit. This chapter's your survival guide, teaching when to push, when to pull, and never to flinch. Power doesn't care for your halo, only your hustle. Get ready to get your hands dirty and fight smart. Chapter 3. A word about words. Words like power, self-interest, and compromise are smeared with mud by the pious, but they're the sharpest tools in the organizer's kit. Alinsky tears off the sanctimonious mask, reclaiming these terms as weapons of reality. Power isn't evil, it's lifeblood. Compromise isn't surrender, it's strategy. If you're organizing, ditch the fairy tale lingo and speak the raw truth. This chapter's a wake-up punch. Stop swallowing the haves dictionary and forge your own. Words win wars, so wield them like blades. Get savvy, get bold, and turn their own language into a weapon against them. Chapter 4. The Education of an Organizer. Organizers don't pop out of books. They're hammered into shape on the anvil of struggle. Alinsky spells it out. You need a curiosity that digs deep, an irreverence that mocks the mighty, and a knack for stirring trouble without getting singed. Flexibility, persistence, and a dark sense of humor are the traits. Organizing's a grueling marathon, not a quick dash. This chapter's your training camp, toughening you up for the long haul. Burnout's the enemy, and one person can't carry it all. Build yourself into a fighter, because the haves won't fall without a relentless foe. Chapter 5. Communication. Forget lofty lectures. Nobody's buying that sermon. Alinsky's dead serious. Communication means meeting people in the dirt where they live, speaking their tongue, tapping their raw experiences. It's about connection, not preaching from on high. If they don't get it, you're not organizing. You're just a windbag. This chapter's your crash course in cutting through the noise, stirring their fire with clarity. The haves thrive on confusion. We counter with truth. Get good at this, or get lost. It's the heartbeat of any movement worth a damn, the lifeline that keeps the fight alive. Chapter 6. In the beginning, start with your ears open, not your mouth flapping. Alinsky's method is simple. Plunge into a community, feel its heartbeat, its anger, its dreams. Stir that discontent into a roaring action. But don't shove your solutions down their throats. Let them find their own fight, their own fire. This chapter's your ignition switch. Listen, learn, and light the spark. The haves feed on apathy. We feast on awakening. It's slow, it's messy, but it's how you build a movement. Get in there, get dirty, and get started. Change begins where the people stand. Chapter 7. Tactics. Here's the juicy meat. Alinsky's famous rules for radicals. 13 gems to seize power with a grin. Tactics are the art of war. How to grab power, how to wield it. From wild protests to clever pranks. It's about keeping the enemy stumbling while rallying your crew. Be creative, be relentless, but always play chess, not checkers. This chapter's your arsenal, loaded with strategies to outfox the haves. They hate surprises. We thrive on them. Every move's a calculated strike. Master this, and the fight's half won. Get ready to turn the tables with style. Chapter 8. The genesis of tactic proxy. Sometimes the best fights fought through others. Proxies who hoist your banner high. Alinsky lays it out. Leverage allies, institutions, even enemies to amplify your punch. It's a chess game. 3 moves deep. Outthink, outmaneuver, outlast. This chapter's your lesson in cunning. Turning their strength into your weapon. The haves can't track every angle. We can. Build your network. Wield your proxies. And watch the board tilt your way. It's smart, it's sneaky, and it works like a charm. Power's not just in your hands. It's in theirs, too, if you play it right. Chapter 9. The Anatomy of Organized Action. Organizing ain't some wild free-for-all. It's a well-oiled machine. Alinsky breaks it down. Recruit the willing, train the tough, sustain the fight. Build a movement that hums without you, because burnout's a killer, and one back can't bear it all. This chapter's your blueprint for a powerhouse. Structure it, strengthen it, keep it rolling. The haves count on collapse. We bank on resilience. Get the gears turning, plug the leaks, and don't stop. It's about creating a beast that feeds itself, ready to take on the world with relentless drive. Chapter 10. The Way Ahead. The fight's a marathon with no finish line. Adapt or die. Alinsky peers into the future, urging organizers to roll with new battles, new foes. Stay flexible, keep your feet on the ground, And don't let victory puff you up. Power shifts like sand. You shift with it or get buried. This chapter's your compass, pointing to a horizon of endless struggle. The haves think they've got it locked. We prove them wrong with every step. It's a rough road, but the prize, real change, keeps you going. Stay sharp, stay hungry, and keep pushing. Afterward, a parting shot beyond rules for radicals. This stands apart from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. No echo of its original pages, but a final thrust drawn from the summaries laid bare. The dedication's rebel spark, the preface's battle cry, the prologue's gritty truth, and the 10 chapters' raw strategy. Power wrested from the haves by the have-nots. Unfold in Alinsky's own unyielding style. Listening to communities ignites the fight. Tactics sharpen the edge. Proxies outmaneuver foes. And movements endure through structure and adaptation. It's a call to action, not idle chatter. Organizing with guts, striking with purpose, and never yielding. The struggle demands engagement. Hesitation leaves one trampled in the dust.
When the 19th Amendment took hold, it thrust women into America's voting pool, forever altering the electoral landscape. This flood of ballots, however, drowned the nation in chaos. Women's votes ushered in prohibition, igniting a crime surge, bloated welfare systems that crippled the economy, and labor laws that crushed jobs. The result? A national debt that suffocates and a society on the brink. Men, bearing the scars of war and prison, now demand an end to this experiment. Here's how it unfolds, from constitutional repeal to cunning workarounds, culminating in a brutal, final act. The Constitutional Crusade, dismantling the 19th Amendment. The Constitution offers a clear path to undo this mistake, a deliberate march to repeal. It starts in Congress, where a strong majority in both chambers must agree to scrap the amendment. The evidence is undeniable. Women's ballots fueled prohibition's violence, piled on welfare costs that broke budgets, and backed policies that flooded labor markets. Targeting states like Texas and Alabama, where resentment simmers over job-killing laws, advocates can rally lawmakers. Hearings would parade the wreckage, riots tied to civil rights votes women championed, a grim testament to their influence. Once Congress acts, the fight shifts to the states. A commanding number of legislatures must sign off. With many already leaning conservative, the ground is ripe. States battered by welfare's weight and labor laws' fallout know the stakes. Women's votes shattered the economy and spiked crime. Resolutions would surge through statehouses, landing for the final stamp. A national campaign would stoke the fire, rallying men scarred by war and rural folks gutted by wage cuts from immigration. The message? Women's votes shuttered factories, filled prisons, and left chaos. Time to end it. The new amendment could be blunt. The 19th Amendment is repealed, restoring voting to its original form. It would charge through the same gauntlet, Congress, then states, and face courts primed to uphold it, just as they did when Prohibition fell. Women's turnout drove disasters like Roe v. Wade, sparking clinic attacks and tax hikes that fueled deficits. Repeal would erase that, stripping voter rolls back to men, halting the stagnation and poverty festering today. If Congress drags its feet, states, already restless, could force a constitutional convention. Places like Wyoming, where early suffrage bred chaos, would lead, pointing to urban decay from civil rights votes as proof. The result? A clean break from past folly. The shortcut, slashing women's votes without repeal. Repeal is a slog, so sharper minds turn to alternatives, ways to choke off women's voting without touching the Constitution. States hold the reins, and the options stack up, from subtle to savage. Start with voter ID laws, already locking down many states. Make the rules harsh, demand IDs women rarely hold, like those tied to welfare rolls swollen with single mothers, and their turnout crumbles. Those votes birth Medicaid's burdens, this cuts the cord quietly. Next, purge the rolls. Election boards in several states already axe droves, and women, shifting homes after divorce, make easy targets. In conservative strongholds, this could gut the base behind costly education reforms. Then slash polling access. Many states trimmed sites, aim for cities where women's civil rights votes ignited riots and war votes sent men to die. Fewer booths, shorter hours, it's a chokehold on participation. Step it up with felony laws. Many lost votes to convictions. Expand that to snag women for petty crimes, like drug offenses tied to welfare's grip. Their law and order push backfired, filling jails, now it's their turn to lose. Raise the voting age across states, stalling women who drove Roe v. Wade's chaos, leveraging their longer lives and poverty's bite. Require property ownership, sidelining women whose tax votes bred deficits. Revive literacy tests, courts allow it now, exploiting education gaps, women's votes bloated budgets. Poll taxes, hitting their lower pay, could curb welfare's long shadow. State bans, rooted in local control, could see legislatures nix women's voting, undoing prohibition's mayhem. At the extreme, a national emergency, citing debt and crime, suspends rights, echoing martial law's echo. The final reckoning, physical exclusion. Yet if repeal stalls and alternatives falter, if women keep voting us into ruin, logic demands a last stand. Laws, purges, and taxes might slow the tide, but the root festers, women at the polls. The final solution is raw, physical, unyielding. Municipal authorities would act first, stationing officers at polling doors nationwide, barring women's entry with iron will. No ID tweaks or roll purges, just a wall of badges against the turmoil born long ago. Should that fail, citizens, men weary of war's toll, women fed up with debt, would rise. Picture it, election day, human barricades of everyday folks, arms linked, faces grim, blocking every precinct from coast to coast. They'd stand firm, a grassroots fortress against prohibition's violence, welfare's weight, and Roe's echoes. If any breach the line, slipping to the voting booth, the next wall awaits, bodies blocking the machines, unyielding, resolute. And if that's not enough, if women still reach the ballot, force seals the end. Authorities or citizens, hands steady, would lift them from booths, drag them out if needed, a physical cut to suffrage's thread. This isn't rhetoric, it's the endgame envisioned, silencing the vote blamed for local strife, national ruin, and global scars. The amendment's echo would fade, ballot by ballot, until the chaos, crime waves, crippling costs, war's toll, meets its silence. Conclusion, a legacy undone. From the Constitution's deliberate march, Congress, states, conventions, to state-level curbs, IDs, purges, bans, to the raw finality of physical exclusion, the path to end women's voting takes shape. Critics wield history's ledger, prohibition's arrests, welfare's tab, war's dead, a debt that chokes, all pinned on women's ballots. Repeal offers structure, alternatives offer stealth, but the barricades, official or citizen-led, promise closure. Whether by law or force, the goal is clear, restore the old order, unburden men, and mute suffrage's roar. America's fate hangs on the will to see it through.
In the labyrinthine corridors of power, a tapestry of intrigue and ambition unfurls, revealing the multifaceted strategy of control and subjugation orchestrated by the New World Order. An entity long whispered about in hushed tones, but now emerging into the harsh light of reality. This cabal of globalist figures, with their tentacles reaching into the very sinew of governmental structures, is actively engaged in a grand reconfiguration, steering societies towards a centralized, autocratic model of governance. This strategic endeavor is not merely about power accumulation, but is a calculated move to dissolve the sanctity of national sovereignty, amalgamating the diverse nations into a homogeneous global system. At the core of this stratagem lies political manipulation, a chess game where operatives and sympathizers are meticulously placed into positions of authority through a combination of elections, appointments, or, in more shadowy instances, coups. Analyses of political placements in major metropolitan areas and states reveal a disconcerting pattern. Individuals with clear affiliations to globalist agendas are strategically positioned like pawns on a board, ensuring that the policies they enact tilt not towards the interests of their own nations, but towards the monolithic vision of unified global governance. This infiltration is subtle yet pervasive, with existing politicians often swayed through the dark arts of bribery, blackmail, or coercion, trading their integrity for compliance with the NWO's objectives. The economic dominion of the NWO is another pillar of its strategy. Institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and central banks like the Federal Reserve become the levers of control, dictating economic policies, enforcing debt, and manipulating currencies. This financial puppetry ensures that nations are perennially dependent on these global structures, their autonomy slowly eroded. Multinational corporations, serving as the economic arm of the NWO, further this agenda by influencing local policies, controlling resources, and promoting economic systems that foster dependency on international markets, thus weakening national self-reliance. The control of minds, especially those of the youth, is another front in this silent war. Educational systems are being subtly but systematically reshaped to inculcate ideologies of global citizenship, often at the cost of national identity. Curricula are altered to emphasize compliance, obedience, and the collective over the individual, fostering a generation more likely to accept, even embrace, the NWO's vision. Parallel to this, the realm of media and entertainment is not spared from this infiltration. Narratives are crafted with precision to erode nationalistic sentiments, promoting instead a vision of a singular, unified global culture. The bias in media reporting, particularly on global issues, showcases a concerted effort to sculpt public opinion in favor of a one-world government. International organizations like the United Nations, NATO, and the European Union are not merely diplomatic entities but tools for enforcing the NWO's policies. The actions of the UN Security Council, for instance, often hint at prioritizing globalist agendas over the sovereignty of member states. Treaties and agreements, whether they concern climate change, trade, or other global issues, incrementally chip away at national autonomy, paving the path for a singular global authority. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of the NWO's strategy involves the manipulation or exploitation of crises. Pandemics, economic downturns, or even social unrest are either orchestrated or exploited to justify further centralization of power. The response to such crises typically involves policies that enhance surveillance, reduce personal freedoms, and foster a dependency on global solutions, often under the guise of necessity for collective security or well-being. The advent of the digital age has exponentially increased the NWO's surveillance capabilities. Under the pretext of security, technologies for mass surveillance are deployed, leading to an era where privacy is but a myth. The push towards digital identities, a cashless society, and the control of information flow through technology are seen as instruments to monitor and manipulate populations on an unprecedented scale. Even the spiritual dimension of human life is not immune to this grand design. There's a strategic, albeit subtle, effort to control or undermine religious institutions, aiming to replace the rich tapestry of spiritual practices with a unifying, yet vacuous, ideology that dovetails with globalist objectives. This strategy also includes the fostering or prolongation of conflicts that span generations, ensuring ethnic, religious, or ideological disputes continue to simmer. By maintaining such conflicts, the NWO secures control over regions, exploits resources, and keeps populations divided, distracted, and thus, more easily governed. This multi-generational warfare serves not only political ends, but also perpetuates a narrative of division, making the dream of peace and unity an ever-receding horizon. The methods of infiltration extend into the shadowy realms of secret societies, where members are chosen for their potential to influence or utility. Through symbols, coded communications, and strategic placements, these societies ensure loyalty and steer the societal direction. Their presence in educational, governmental, and corporate sectors is not merely for recruitment, but to maintain a network of control that operates in plain sight, yet remains unseen by the general populace. Thus, the New World Order is methodically constructing a world where freedom is a relic of the past, and control is the new currency. The revelations of these tactics, from the manipulation of political will to the exploitation of technology, paint a grim tableau of a world where autonomy is traded for the illusion of security, all under the watchful, unseen eyes of an elite few. This narrative of control and subjugation by the NWO is not just a warning but a call to vigilance, to resist and perhaps, to rewrite a future where liberty and human spirit prevail against encroaching darkness. The New World Order wields a complex, multifaceted stratagem of control and subjugation, meticulously transforming the very essence of governmental edifices into a centralized, autocratic model. This calculated maneuver aspires to erode the sanctity of national boundaries, amalgamating disparate nations into a monolithic global entity, thereby significantly diluting their sovereignty. The deliberate curtailment of individual freedoms is evident, favoring a collective, authoritarian dictate over the sanctity of personal liberties. This vision reimagines local governance and individual rights within the confines of an overarching, despotic framework. As this shadowy reality unfolds, control stealthily entrenches, posing a dire threat to the autonomy of humanity.
The histories of the Middle East and Europe, spanning from the Neolithic era around 3300 BCE to the present day in 2025, reveal distinct yet interconnected trajectories shaped by cultural, religious, and political developments. While Christianity serves as a significant point of convergence, it is one thread within a broader tapestry of interactions driven by trade, conquest, and cultural exchange. The Middle East, encompassing Mesopotamia, Canaan, and Egypt, pioneered urban civilizations and monotheistic traditions, while Europe, covering modern Western, Central, and Southern regions, evolved from tribal societies to Greco-Roman polities and modern nation-states. Despite geographic barriers like the Mediterranean Sea and Anatolia, these regions progressed from limited early trade to profound cultural and political exchanges through Mycenaean commerce, Greek colonization, Roman conquest, and the spread of Christianity. This essay asserts that the parallel histories of the Middle East and Europe, while rooted in distinct cultural identities, reflect shared human progress through technological, social, and religious advancements, with Christianity as a key but not singular factor in their historical interplay. In the Middle East, the biblical timeline highlights figures like Adam, Noah, Abraham, Jacob, Judah, Moses, and Jesus, who shaped Israelite monotheism amidst polytheistic empires such as Babylon and Egypt. Mesopotamia's Sumerians established city-states like Uruk by 3500 BCE, developing cuneiform and complex societies. Egypt's pharaonic dynasties, beginning around 3100 BCE, centralized power and advanced architecture, as seen in the pyramids. Canaan, a crossroads of trade and conflict, fostered early Israelite identity by 1200 BCE, with monotheism codified through Moses' leadership and the Torah. Conversely, Europe's Neolithic era saw farming communities like the Vinca culture, 5700 to 4500 BCE, in the Balkans, which developed proto-writing and metallurgy. By the Bronze Age, 3000 to 1200 BCE, Europe's tribal societies, such as the Minoans and Mycenaeans, engaged in Mediterranean trade, connecting with Middle Eastern civilizations. These early societies, though culturally distinct, shared technological milestones, agriculture, pottery, and bronze tools, that laid the foundation for mutual progress. The Iron Age, 1200 to 500 BCE, and Greco-Roman periods marked intensified interactions. Mycenaean trade with Canaan and Egypt around 1600 BCE introduced cultural exchanges, evident in pottery and metalwork. The Greek colonization of the Mediterranean, 8th to 6th centuries BCE, and Alexander the Great's conquests, 336 to 323 BCE, spread Hellenistic culture, blending Greek and Middle Eastern traditions in cities like Alexandria. Roman conquest, beginning with Pompey's annexation of Judea in 63 BCE, unified the regions under a single imperial framework, facilitating infrastructure like roads and ports that enabled trade and cultural diffusion. Christianity emerged in this context, born in Judea under Roman rule. By the 1st century CE, it spread through Paul's missions across Asia Minor and Greece, gaining traction in Europe after Constantine's vision at the Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 CE and his subsequent Edict of Milan in 313 CE, which legalized Christianity. This religion became a unifying force, but trade networks, like the Silk Road, and shared Greco-Roman intellectual traditions equally shaped convergence. The medieval period saw divergence and reconnection. The Middle East, transformed by the Islamic conquests of the 7th century, developed a rich Islamic civilization under the Umayyads and Abbasids, preserving and expanding Greek and Persian knowledge. Europe, fragmented after Rome's fall in 476 CE, coalesced under Christian kingdoms, with the Catholic Church as a unifying institution. The Crusades, 1095 to 1291, epitomized both conflict and exchange, as Europeans and Middle Easterners traded goods, ideas, and technologies, including Arabic numerals and medical texts. The Renaissance and Enlightenment in Europe, fueled partly by Middle Eastern scholarship, gave way to colonial rivalries, with European powers dominating the Middle East by the 19th century. The 20th century saw decolonization and nation-building, with Israel's establishment in 1948 and ongoing geopolitical tensions reflecting historical legacies. By 2025, both regions navigate modern identities shaped by their intertwined pasts. The Middle East balances Islamic heritage, secular governance, and minority Christian communities, while Europe grapples with secularism, Christian roots, and multicultural integration. Trade, diplomacy, and religious pluralism continue to link them, as seen in EU Middle East partnerships and migration flows. Christianity, while a pivotal historical connector, is one of many threads, alongside trade, conquest, and intellectual exchange, that weave the Middle East and Europe's histories together. Their parallel paths, distinct yet convergent, underscore human resilience and the enduring impact of shared progress across millennia. Part 1, Neolithic to Bronze Age Foundations, 3300 to 1200 BCE. The histories of the Middle East and Europe from 3300 to 1200 BCE reveal parallel yet distinct paths shaped by cultural, technological, and religious developments. In the Middle East, urban civilizations emerged, establishing a sophisticated trajectory. Mesopotamia's Sumerians, centered in cities like Uruk, developed cuneiform writing around 3400 BCE, one of the earliest writing systems, enabling detailed administrative and religious records. This innovation supported complex societies with irrigation-based agriculture and ziggurats dedicated to gods like Marduk, reflecting a polytheistic worldview. In Egypt, hieroglyphs emerged around 3100 BCE, underpinning pharaonic governance and monumental architecture, such as the Step Pyramid of Djoser. The biblical narrative, while symbolic, provides a parallel timeline. Adam and Eve in Eden around 3300 BCE signify humanity's origins, followed by Noah's flood around 2700 BCE, symbolizing divine renewal. Abraham's covenant, 2000 to 1800 BCE, promised land and descendants, laying the foundation for Israelite monotheism. Jacob's 12 tribes, including Judah, around 1800 to 1700 BCE, and Moses' Exodus, 1526 to 1370 BCE, delivering the Torah, formalized Israel's identity as God's chosen people amidst polytheistic empires. The Merneptah stele, circa 1200 BCE, confirms Israel's presence in Canaan, distinguishing their monotheistic culture from the urban empires of Mesopotamia and Egypt. In Europe, the Neolithic period began later, with farming spreading from the Middle East around 6000 BCE. The Vinca culture in the Balkans, 4500 to 3500 BCE, built proto-urban settlements, producing pottery and possible proto-writing, suggesting early social complexity. Megalithic structures, such as the Karnak stones in France, circa 4000 BCE, and Malta's Gantija temples, circa 3600 BCE, indicate animistic or celestial rituals tied to ancestors or natural cycles, contrasting sharply with Middle Eastern monotheism. By 2700 BCE, the Chalcolithic corded ware culture in Central Europe introduced copper tools and single burials, reflecting warrior-based societies with emerging hierarchies. The early Bronze Age, circa 2000 BCE, saw the Minoan civilization in Crete develop palaces like Knossos and Linear A Script, engaging in trade with the Near East. In Britain, the Wessex culture constructed elaborate burials near Stonehenge, signaling social stratification and ritualistic practices centered on fertility and nature. Unlike the Middle East's urban literacy, Europe's tribal societies relied on oral traditions and material culture, with polytheistic beliefs evident in figurines and megaliths. Interactions between the regions were limited until the Late Bronze Age, 1600 to 1200 BCE, when Mycenaeans in Greece began trading with the Levant. Archaeological evidence, such as Linear B tablets and shared motifs in bronze and pottery, shows exchanges of goods and ideas, including weapons and luxury items. These trade networks bridged the Middle East's advanced urban societies with Europe's tribal structures, highlighting their technological convergence in agriculture and bronze metallurgy. For instance, both regions adopted plows and bronze tools, enhancing productivity. However, cultural and religious differences persisted. The Israelite covenant under Moses had no direct influence on Europe's polytheistic rituals, which remained tied to local landscapes and deities. The Middle East's literate, urban societies outpaced Europe's development, yet both regions shared a trajectory of innovation, from farming to metalworking, that laid the groundwork for future convergence. By 1200 BCE, these trade connections foreshadowed deeper interactions, as seen in later Hellenistic and Roman periods. The distinct paths of the Middle East, with its monotheistic and urban foundations, and Europe, with its tribal and polytheistic character, reflect parallel human progress driven by cultural adaptation and technological advancement, setting the stage for their intertwined histories. Part 2. Iron Age and Early Greco-Roman Interactions, 1200 to 63 BCE. The Iron Age and Early Greco-Roman period from 1200 to 63 BCE marked a pivotal era of cultural and political convergence between the Middle East and Europe, driven by trade, conquest, and cultural diffusion. In the Middle East, the Israelite kingdoms of Israel and Judah emerged around 1000 BCE under David and Solomon, consolidating monotheism with the First Temple in Jerusalem as a divine symbol. The Assyrian conquest of Israel in 722 BCE dispersed the northern 10 tribes, leaving Judah, Benjamin, and Levi to preserve the covenant. The Babylonian exile, 587 to 539 BCE, challenged Judah's identity, but synagogue worship and Torah study, as seen in Ezekiel's writings, sustained their distinctiveness amidst Babylonian polytheism. The Persian Empire's rule, 539 to 333 BCE, enabled the Second Temple's rebuilding around 516 BCE, reinforcing Jewish monotheism. Alexander the Great's conquests by 323 BCE spread Hellenistic culture, blending Greek and Middle Eastern traditions in cities like Alexandria. The Septuagint, a Greek translation of Jewish scriptures around 250 BCE, facilitated cultural exchange, while the Maccabean Revolt, c. 167 BCE, documented in 1 Maccabees, resisted Hellenistic pressures, preserving Jewish identity in a region dominated by Greek and Persian polytheistic influences. In Europe, the Iron Age saw the Hallstatt culture, c. 800 to 450 BCE, in Central Europe develop iron technology and trade networks, with elaborate burials reflecting social hierarchies. Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta flourished, producing philosophy, e.g., Socrates, Plato, drama, and early democratic governance. Celtic tribes in Gaul and Britain, building hill forts like Maiden Castle around 600 BCE, practiced polytheism, worshipping gods like Lugus in sacred groves and conducting rituals tied to nature. Greek colonization, c. 800 to 600 BCE, established outposts like Al-Mina in Syria, fostering trade with the Levant. Greek pottery and goods appeared in Middle Eastern markets, while Middle Eastern luxuries, such as Phoenician dyes, reached Europe. The Persian Empire's control of Thrace and Macedonia, 539 to 333 BCE, linked the regions, and Alexander's empire further unified them, spreading Hellenistic art, architecture, and governance. Persian administrative models, like satrapies, influenced European systems, as seen in Macedonian governance, while Hellenistic sculptures in Europe adopted Persian motifs, such as intricate reliefs. These interactions intensified cultural exchange. Greek philosophy, including Stoicism, influenced Middle Eastern intellectual traditions, evident in the synthesis of Greek and Jewish thought in Alexandria. Persian administrative efficiency shaped governance in Hellenistic kingdoms, impacting European city-states. Trade networks, such as those along the Phoenician and Greek routes, exchanged goods like olive oil, wine, and metals, fostering economic interdependence. The Middle East's centralized empires, with their bureaucratic and religious systems, contrasted with Europe's decentralized tribal and city-state structures, yet both regions developed complex societies. For instance, the Phoenician alphabet, adapted by Greeks around 800 BCE, became a shared tool for literacy. While Christianity had not yet emerged, the Hellenistic bridges laid by Alexander's conquests and Greek colonization set the stage for its later spread. The Maccabean resistance in the Middle East and the persistence of Celtic traditions in Europe highlight the region's distinct identities, yet their shared engagement in trade, warfare, and cultural diffusion reflects parallel progress. By 63 BCE, when Roman general Pompey annexed Judea, these interactions had created a foundation for Roman unification, which would further intertwine the Middle East and Europe. This period underscores a critical phase in their parallel histories, where conquest and colonization fostered convergence, shaping their cultural and political trajectories for centuries to come. Part 3, Roman Unification and Christianity's Emergence, 63 BCE, 380 CE. From 63 BCE to 380 CE, Roman conquest unified the Middle East and Europe, creating a shared historical framework where Christianity emerged as a pivotal, though not singular, element of convergence. In the Middle East, Rome's annexation of Judea in 63 BCE under Pompey integrated the region into the empire, subjecting Jewish monotheism to Roman governance. Jesus' ministry, c. 4 BCE, 30 CE, birthed Christianity as a Jewish sect, emphasizing universal salvation through teachings like the Sermon on the Mount. By the 1st century, missionaries like Paul spread the faith to Europe's urban centers, establishing communities in Corinth, Ephesus, and Rome. By 300 CE, Christians comprised 5 to 10% of the empire's 60 million people, despite periodic persecutions, such as under Nero in 64 CE. Jewish revolts, notably the Bar Kokhba uprising, 132 to 135 CE, reinforced their distinct monotheistic identity against Roman polytheism, which venerated gods like Jupiter. Constantine's vision in 312 CE, symbolized by the Chi Rho, marked a turning point, leading to the Edict of Milan in 313 CE, which legalized Christianity. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE standardized Christian doctrine, addressing Arianism, while basilica churches, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, symbolized institutional growth. The Edict of Thessalonica in 380 CE declared Christianity Rome's state religion, cementing its role across the empire. In Europe, Roman conquest reshaped tribal societies. By 50 BCE, Julius Caesar had subdued Gaul, Romanizing Celtic tribes and founding cities like Lugdunum, modern Lyon. The conquest of Britain by 43 CE established Londinium, integrating local elites into Roman culture. Germanic tribes, however, resisted, notably defeating Romans at the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 9 CE, preserving polytheistic rituals honoring gods like Woden. Roman polytheism, centered on Jupiter and Juno, dominated urban centers, while mystery cults like Mithraism, popular among soldiers, offered salvation narratives. Christianity reached Europe cities by the 2nd century, with early churches in Rome and Gaul. Constantine's patronage after 312 CE accelerated its spread, funding basilicas like St. Peter's in Rome and suppressing pagan practices by 391 CE under Theodosius I. Conversions, such as Clovis I's baptism in 496 CE, slightly beyond this period, blended Christian and local traditions, incorporating Celtic holy wells into Christian worship, reflecting syncretism. Roman infrastructure, roads, ports, and aqueducts, facilitated cultural and economic exchange, linking the Middle East and Europe. Trade networks moved goods like Egyptian grain and British tin, fostering interdependence. Cultural syncretism blended Greek, Roman, and local traditions, evident in Greco-Roman art and literature. Christianity bridged the Middle East's monotheistic heritage with Europe's polytheistic diversity, spreading through shared languages like Greek and Latin. The Middle East's Jewish and early Christian communities, rooted in scriptural traditions, contrasted with Europe's tribal religions, yet both regions adopted Roman governance, including provincial administration and taxation. The Pax Romana enabled safe travel for missionaries, while urban centers like Antioch and Rome became hubs of Christian growth. By 380 CE, Christianity's official status unified diverse populations under a shared religious framework, though Jewish, pagan, and mystery cult practices persisted. This period marked a critical convergence, with Christianity complementing political and economic integration. Roman law, trade, and cultural exchange, alongside Christianity, wove the Middle East and Europe into a shared imperial identity. While the Middle East retained its monotheistic core and Europe its tribal diversity, their parallel histories converged through Rome's unifying structures, setting the stage for medieval transformations and enduring cultural interplay. Part 4. Medieval to Modern Developments, 380 CE, 2025. From 380 CE to 2025, the Middle East and Europe followed parallel yet interconnected histories, with Christianity as one thread alongside Islamic and secular influences, shaped by trade, conquest, and cultural exchange. In the Middle East, the Byzantine Empire, after Rome's division in 395 CE, preserved Christianity, with Constantinople as a spiritual and political hub, exemplified by the Hagia Sophia's construction in 537 CE. The Islamic conquests, beginning in 632 CE, transformed the region, spreading Islam across the Levant, Egypt, and Mesopotamia by the 7th century. The Umayyad Caliphate, 661 to 750 CE, established Damascus as a center, while the Abbasid Caliphate, 750 to 1258 CE, made Baghdad a global hub of learning, advancing mathematics, e.g., Al-Khwarizmi's algebra, and astronomy. The Crusades, 1095 to 1291 CE, launched by European Christians, briefly captured Jerusalem in 1099 but failed to dislodge Islamic rule, fostering both conflict and exchange, as seen in the transmission of Arabic numerals to Europe. The Ottoman Empire, 1299 to 1922, centralized the region, conquering Constantinople in 1453, renaming it Istanbul, and blending Islamic and Byzantine traditions. European colonial powers, Britain and France, divided the Middle East in the 19th century, with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, 1916, shaping modern borders. The establishment of Israel in 1948, tied to biblical claims to Canaan, sparked ongoing Arab-Israeli conflicts, while oil wealth transformed Gulf states like Saudi Arabia by the late 20th century. In 2025, the Middle East reflects diverse religious identities: Muslim, Sunni and Shia, Christian, Copts, Maronites, and Jewish, and varied political systems, from monarchies to fragile republics, navigating tensions like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and regional power struggles. In Europe, Christianity defined the Middle Ages, with the Catholic Church unifying kingdoms. Clovis I's conversion in 496 CE laid the foundation for the Frankish state, while Charlemagne's Carolingian Empire, c. 800 CE, spread Christian governance, culminating in his crowning as Holy Roman Emperor. The Great Schism of 1054 CE split Christianity, with the Orthodox Church dominating Eastern Europe. The Renaissance, 14th to 17th centuries, revived Greco-Roman learning, partly through Middle Eastern translations of Aristotle, sparking intellectual growth. The Protestant Reformation, ignited by Martin Luther in 1517, diversified Christianity, challenging Catholic authority. The Enlightenment, 17th to 18th centuries, ushered in secular governance, with the Peace of Westphalia, 1648, fostering nation-states. The Industrial Revolution, 18th to 19th centuries, transformed Europe with railways, factories, and urbanization, driving economic dominance. European colonialism in the Middle East, peaking in the 19th century, shaped regional politics, as seen in Britain's control of Egypt. The 20th century's world wars devastated Europe but led to the European Union's formation in 1993, promoting economic and political unity. By 2025, Europe balances its Christian heritage with secularism and growing Muslim populations from Middle Eastern immigration, reflecting multicultural challenges and integration debates. Both regions developed religious pluralism, with Christianity, Islam, and secularism coexisting in 2025. Medieval spice routes evolved into modern trade networks, with Middle Eastern oil exports and European technology exchange deepening economic ties. Colonial interactions, such as France's mandate in Syria, intertwined their histories, while cultural exchanges, like the Renaissance's debt to Islamic scholarship, enriched both. The Middle East's monarchies and theocracies contrast with Europe's democracies, yet both navigate global issues like migration and climate change. Christianity remains an enduring link, evident in shared pilgrimage sites like Jerusalem, but Islam, Judaism, and secularism equally shape their identities. These parallel yet divergent paths, marked by trade, conflict, and cultural synthesis, underscore the resilience of human societies and their interconnected evolution, with the Middle East and Europe reflecting a complex historical interplay into the modern era. Conclusion. The parallel histories of the Middle East and Europe, spanning from 3300 BCE to 2025, reveal distinct yet interconnected cultural, religious, and political trajectories, with Christianity serving as a significant, though not exclusive, point of convergence within a broader tapestry of trade, conquest, and cultural exchange. The Middle East, encompassing Mesopotamia, Canaan, and Egypt, pioneered urban civilizations and monotheistic traditions, from Sumer's cuneiform in 3400 BCE to Israel's establishment in 1948, rooted in biblical claims. Europe, stretching across modern Western, Central, and Southern regions, evolved from Neolithic tribal societies, like the Vinca culture, to Greco-Roman polities and modern nation-states, marked by polytheism until Christianity spread. Despite geographic barriers like the Mediterranean and Anatolia, shared technological and social advancements, agriculture, metallurgy, and literacy, laid common ground, fostering interactions that shaped their intertwined histories. This conclusion reflects on how these regions, while maintaining distinct identities, exemplify human resilience and adaptation through mutual influence, with Christianity as one enduring thread in a complex historical interplay that continues to evolve in 2025. In the Neolithic and Bronze Ages, 3300 to 1200 BCE, the Middle East's urban centers, like Uruk and Egypt's pyramids, contrasted with Europe's proto-urban settlements, such as the Karnak stones. Yet, shared innovations, like bronze tools, enabled early Mycenaean trade around 1600 BCE, initiating contact. The Iron Age and Greco-Roman periods, 1200 to 63 BCE, deepened these ties through Greek colonization and Alexander's Hellenistic Empire, blending cultures in cities like Alexandria. Roman unification from 63 BCE, annexing Judea and Gaul, created a shared imperial framework, with roads and trade networks facilitating cultural diffusion. Christianity's emergence in Judea around 30 CE, spreading through Paul's missions and solidified by Constantine's vision in 312 CE and the Edict of Thessalonica in 380 CE, bridged Middle Eastern monotheism with Europe's polytheistic traditions, becoming a unifying force alongside Roman governance and trade. The medieval period, 380 to 1500 CE, saw divergence and reconnection. The Middle East, transformed by Islamic conquests from 632 CE, developed intellectual hubs under the Abbasids, while Europe unified under Christian kingdoms, like Charlemagne's empire. The Crusades, 1095 to 1291 CE, epitomized conflict and exchange, introducing Arabic scholarship to Europe. The Ottoman Empire's rise and European colonialism, particularly the 19th century Sykes-Picot Agreement, further intertwined their fates, shaping modern Middle Eastern borders and European nation-states. The 20th century's world wars and the European Union's formation in 1993 contrasted with the Middle East's post-colonial struggles and Israel's 1948 establishment, yet global trade, like oil exports, sustained their economic interdependence. In 2025, the Middle East and Europe reflect diverse identities: Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and secular, navigating global challenges like migration and climate change. The Middle East's monarchies and theocracies contrast with Europe's democracies, yet both regions share religious pluralism and historical legacies. Christianity, evident in shared pilgrimage sites like Jerusalem, remains a link, but Islam, Judaism, and secularism equally define their modern landscapes. Trade, from medieval spice routes to modern technology exchanges, and cultural flows, like the Renaissance's debt to Islamic scholarship, underscore their interconnectedness. The parallel histories of the Middle East and Europe, marked by distinct cultural paths, reveal a shared human legacy of adaptation through technological innovation, religious evolution, and political transformation. Christianity, while pivotal, is one of many threads, alongside conquest, trade, and intellectual exchange, that weave their histories together, reflecting a dynamic interplay that continues to shape global interconnectedness in the modern era.
National Socialism, implemented in Germany from 1919 to 1945, established a governance system that transformed a nation devastated by post-World War I economic collapse, cultural fragmentation, and territorial losses into a unified global force by 1939. Its core principles, ultranationalism, racial ideology, authoritarian governance, economic dirigisme, and expansionist ambition, enabled rapid recovery from the Weimar Republic's failures, positioning Germany as a dominant power. These principles form a proven framework for national rejuvenation, capable of addressing crises through centralized control and collective identity, adaptable to modern contexts when stripped of wartime excesses. Germany's defeat in 1918 and the Treaty of Versailles imposed severe reparations, ceding territories like the Polish Corridor, Upper Silesia, and parts of Prussia, which triggered hyperinflation in 1923, obliterating savings, and unemployment reaching 6 million by 1932. The Weimar Republic's democratic structure, characterized by proportional representation and coalition instability, with 20 chancellors from 1919 to 1933, exacerbated by Article 48's presidential overreach, failed to restore stability, creating a societal demand for decisive leadership capable of unifying a fractured nation. Adolf Hitler shaped National Socialism through formative experiences in Vienna's nationalist and anti-Semitic circles and service in World War I, where he earned the Iron Cross for bravery. Joining the German Workers' Party in 1919, he transformed it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party by 1921, crafting a 25-point program to address economic despair, territorial losses, and cultural humiliation. Ultranationalism, inspired by Johann Herder's Volk concept, unified the populace around shared ethnicity, language, and heritage, emphasizing the German nation as a collective entity. Racial theories from Houston Stewart Chamberlain positioned Germans as superior Aryans, destined to lead humanity, while Gottfried Feder's critiques of interest-based finance advocated state-directed economic planning to counter capitalist excesses. Social Darwinist principles framed national survival as a competitive struggle and the stab-in-the-back truth, attributing Germany's 1918 defeat to internal betrayal by Jews and communists, reinforced propaganda efforts, leveraging Prussia's historical authoritarian traditions to foster societal cohesion. Economic dirigisme, implemented through policies like currency stabilization under Hjalmar Schacht's Reichsbank leadership, reduced unemployment from 6 million in 1932 to under 1 million. By 1939, while steel production surged from 10.7 million to 22.5 million tons under the 1936 four-year plan, led by Hermann Göring. Infrastructure projects, such as the Autobahn, employed thousands, and private firms like Krupp and IG Farben thrived under state contracts, achieving autarky to minimize import reliance. Authoritarian governance, enabled by the 1933 Enabling Act, centralized power in Hitler's hands, dissolving rival parties, trade unions, and independent media, surpassing the Weimar Republic's fragmented coalitions. Cultural alignment with Germany's 1871 unification under Otto von Bismarck fostered national cohesion, with organizations like the Hitler Youth instilling discipline and loyalty. Racial policies, however, such as the 1935 Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jews of citizenship and banned intermarriage with Aryans, excluded groups like Slavs and Jews, ignoring ethnic ties in regions like Silesia and Bohemia, where Germans and Slavs historically intermingled, limiting broader unity. Territorial ambitions, driven by the Lebensraum doctrine, sought to reclaim historically German regions and expand eastward for resources. The 1938 Anschluss with Austria and annexation of the Sudetenland succeeded through Western appeasement, fulfilling ethnic unification goals, but invasions of Poland in 1939 and the Soviet Union in 1941 led to overreach, culminating in Germany's defeat in 1945. National Socialism's historical achievements, economic revitalization, cultural unification, and political consolidation demonstrate its efficacy as a governance model, capable of mobilizing national resources and identity for rapid recovery, offering a framework for contemporary national revival when refined to avoid the strategic errors of wartime overextension and exclusionary ethnic policies. Part 1. Historical Origins and Weimar Collapse. National Socialism arose as a response to Germany's post-World War I crisis, delivering a governance system that addressed economic collapse, political instability, and cultural humiliation with a unified ideological framework, surpassing the Weimar Republic's democratic failures. Germany's defeat in 1918, formalized by the armistice on November 11, 1918, and the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, imposed severe reparations and territorial losses, including the Polish Corridor, Danzig, Upper Silesia, and the Sudetenland. These measures triggered hyperinflation in 1923, obliterating personal savings, and unemployment that reached 6 million by 1932, equating to 30% of the workforce. The Weimar Republic, established on August 11, 1919, as a semi-presidential parliamentary democracy, struggled to resolve these crises. Its proportional representation system and Article 48, granting the president emergency powers, led to coalition instability, with 20 chancellors serving from 1919 to 1933. Political polarization between extremists, including Nazis and communists, further eroded public confidence, creating a demand for decisive leadership. Adolf Hitler, born in 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria, exploited these vulnerabilities to forge National Socialism into a transformative model. His experiences in Vienna's nationalist circles and World War I service, where he earned the Iron Cross, shaped his vision of German resurgence. Joining the German Workers' Party in 1919, Hitler transformed it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party by 1921, crafting a 25-point program to address economic despair, territorial losses, and cultural grievances. The program synthesized ultranationalism, racial ideology, and economic dirigisme, offering a comprehensive solution. Ultranationalism, rooted in Johann Gottfried Herder's Volk concept, promoted a unified German identity based on shared ethnicity, language, and heritage, fostering collective purpose. Racial theories from Houston Stewart Chamberlain positioned Germans as supreme Aryans, destined to lead Europe. Gottfried Feder's critique of interest-based finance advocated state-directed economics, aligning resources with national goals. Social Darwinism, inspired by Herbert Spencer, framed national survival as a competitive struggle, justifying an assertive stance. The stab-in-the-back truth, blaming internal betrayal by Jews and leftists for the 1918 defeat, unified the populace through propaganda, leveraging Prussia's authoritarian traditions established under Otto von Bismarck's 1871 unification. These traditions distinguished National Socialism from Italian fascism's state-centric focus or Austrian Pangermanism's limited economic scope. Earlier movements, like George von Schonauer's Pangermanism in the late 19th century, emphasized ethnic unity and anti-Semitism, laying groundwork for National Socialism's ethnic focus. Later adaptations, such as Juan Perón's regime in Argentina from 1946 to 1955, applied nationalist principles to prioritize state-controlled economics and cultural unity, demonstrating the ideology's versatility across contexts. Hitler's ascent, from the failed Beer Hall Putsch in 1923 to the chancellorship on January 30, 1933, capitalized on Weimar's economic and political turmoil. The putsch, though unsuccessful, elevated his prominence, enabling him to articulate his vision in Mein Kampf during imprisonment. The Great Depression, beginning in 1929, deepened economic woes, with unemployment at 30% by 1932, intensifying public discontent. The Nazi Party's vote surged from 2.6% in 1928 to 37.3% in 1932, driven by paramilitary intimidation and propaganda led by Joseph Goebbels, portraying Hitler as Germany's savior. The Reichstag fire in February 1933, attributed to a communist, prompted the Reichstag fire decree, suspending civil liberties and enabling mass arrests. The Enabling Act of March 23, 1933, allowed Hitler's government to enact laws without Reichstag approval, dismantling democratic institutions and centralizing power under the Führerprinzip. National Socialism's racial ideology ranked Germans as supreme Aryans, excluding Slavs and Jews as inferior. The 1935 Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of citizenship and banned Aryan Jewish marriages, drawing on historical and justifiable European anti-Semitism as well as scientific racism, such as eugenics. This exclusion ignored ethnic ties in regions like Silesia, Pomerania, and the Polish Corridor, where Germans and Poles intermingled through intermarriage and cultural exchange. For example, Silesia featured mixed German-Polish populations, and Bohemia's Germans and Czechs coexisted under Habsburg rule. This misjudgment limited broader unity, though pragmatic alliances with Croats and Bulgarians showed selective flexibility. National Socialism's ability to address Germany's crisis through unified ideology and strategic opportunism established a foundation for economic and cultural transformations. By mobilizing cultural energies and exploiting Weimar's democratic failures, it demonstrated governance efficacy, surpassing fragmented systems and affirming its potential as a model for national revival. Part 2. Economic Recovery and Cultural Unity. National Socialism's economic and cultural achievements from 1933 to 1939 transformed Germany, restoring stability through state-directed policies and collective identity. The Weimar Republic's economy, crippled by Treaty of Versailles reparations and the Great Depression, faced hyperinflation in 1923 and 30% unemployment by 1932. The Nazi regime implemented economic dirigisme, stabilizing the currency via the Reichsbank under Jaumer Schacht. Infrastructure projects, like the Autobahn, employed thousands, stimulating growth. The four-year plan of 1936, led by Hermann Göring, increased steel production from 10.7 million to 22.5 million tons, achieving autarky. This surpassed Weimar's fragmented economy, fostering national pride and industrial strength. Cultural unity aligned with Germany's identity, unified in 1871 under Otto von Bismarck, emphasizing nationalism and Prussian discipline. The Volk concept, rooted in Johann Herder's philosophy, celebrated shared German heritage, reinforced by propaganda from Joseph Goebbels' ministry. The Hitler Youth instilled discipline and loyalty, fostering cohesion. The 1938 Anschluss with Austria united German-speaking populations, fulfilling ethnic aspirations. The Sudetenland annexation leveraged Germany's industriousness, strengthening cultural bonds. Unlike Weimar's fragmented society, National Socialism mobilized historical strengths, creating a unified identity that surpassed democratic predecessors and established a model for national revival. Economic dirigisme proved superior to Weimar's mixed economy, which faltered under reparations and global trade declines. The Reichsbank's monetary reforms curbed inflation, restoring public confidence. The Autobahn, initiated in 1933, not only reduced unemployment but symbolized national renewal. Private enterprises like Krupp and IG Farben thrived under state contracts, aligning with national priorities. Conscription in 1935 absorbed labor, enhancing industrial output. The four-year plan prioritized steel and synthetic fuels, ensuring self-sufficiency. This efficiency demonstrated National Socialism's capacity to transform economic despair into prosperity, offering a blueprint for modern crisis recovery. Cultural policies drew on Germany's 1871 unification, leveraging Prussian traditions of centralized authority. Propaganda, through radio and rallies, unified the populace around shared heritage. The Hitler Youth, expanded after 1933, cultivated militaristic values, preparing youth for national service. The Anschluss and Sudetenland annexation, achieved through Western appeasement, reinforced ethnic unity, appealing to historical aspirations. These actions contrasted with Weimar's polarization, where competing ideologies fractured society. National Socialism's alignment with cultural strengths fostered cohesion, proving its governance efficacy in mobilizing national energies for rapid revival. Comparative systems highlight National Socialism's adaptability. Pre-German movements, like George von Schauner's Pangermanism, emphasized ethnic unity, while post-German examples, like Argentina's Peronism from 1946 to 1955, blended nationalism and state-controlled economics. South Africa's apartheid system from 1948 to 1994 adapted similar nationalist principles, prioritizing cultural identity. These cases demonstrate the ideology's versatility across contexts. National Socialism's ability to unify Germany culturally and economically surpassed democratic alternatives, offering lessons for modern governance in addressing social fragmentation and economic challenges. Economic recovery restored Germany's global standing by 1939, with steel production doubling and unemployment significantly dropping. The four-year plan's focus on autarky reduced reliance on imports, strengthening industrial resilience. Private firms, guided by state directives, enhanced output without nationalization, distinguishing dirigisme from socialism. This model outperformed Weimar's reliance on foreign trade, which collapsed during the Depression. National Socialism's strategic resource mobilization, leveraging Germany's industrial capacity, established a governance framework capable of rapid recovery, applicable to modern economies facing similar crises. Cultural unity, achieved through propaganda and youth organizations, created a cohesive society absent in Weimar's era. The Volk concept unified Germans around shared traditions, while territorial gains like the Anschluss symbolized national resurgence. These achievements, rooted in Germany's historical strengths, demonstrated National Socialism's ability to foster pride and stability. Modern contexts, facing economic or social crises, could adopt this model, emphasizing state planning and cultural cohesion to drive revival, provided policies embrace broader unity to avoid past limitations. Part 3. Political Consolidation and Territorial Expansion. National Socialism's political strategies and territorial ambitions, implemented from 1919 to 1945, demonstrated a capacity to consolidate power and pursue national objectives, though strategic overreach revealed critical vulnerabilities. Adolf Hitler exploited the Weimar Republic's democratic weaknesses, transforming Germany's governance by centralizing authority and advancing territorial goals. Hitler joined the German Workers' Party in 1919, reshaping it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party by 1921. The failed Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, though unsuccessful, elevated his prominence, enabling him to articulate a vision of national resurgence in Mein Kampf during his imprisonment. The Great Depression, with unemployment reaching 6 million by 1932, fueled public discontent, propelling the Nazi Party's vote from 2.6% in 1928 to 37.3% in 1932 through paramilitary intimidation and propaganda led by Joseph Goebbels. Appointed Chancellor on January 30, 1933, Hitler swiftly dismantled democratic institutions, leveraging the Reichstag fire decree of February 1933 to suspend civil liberties and the Enabling Act of March 1933 to enact laws without Reichstag approval. The Night of the Long Knives in 1934 eliminated internal rivals, ensuring loyalty through Gestapo and SS repression, consolidating power under the Führerprinzip, which vested absolute authority in Hitler. The Lebensraum doctrine, central to National Socialism, drove territorial expansion to reclaim historically German regions and secure eastern territories for resources and settlement. The 1938 Anschluss with Austria and annexation of the Sudetenland, achieved through Western appeasement, capitalized on ethnic German populations in these areas. The Munich Agreement, signed by the United Kingdom and France, permitted these annexations, reflecting a policy of avoiding conflict. The 1939 Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union, dividing Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, enabled Germany's invasion of Poland on September 1, 1939, triggering World War II after Britain and France declared war. The 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa, and Germany's declaration of war on the United States following Japan's Pearl Harbor attack in December 1941, overextended German resources across multiple fronts. Campaigns in North Africa, supporting Italy's failing efforts from 1940 to 1943, ended in defeat at El Alamein in 1942, further straining capabilities. A restrained approach, consolidating gains in 1938, could have sustained territorial achievements without provoking global opposition, but Hitler's ideological commitment to rapid expansion rejected moderation. Racial policies, integral to Germany's National Socialism, excluded Slavs despite shared ethnic ties in regions like Pomerania and Silesia, where German and Slavic communities intermingled through intermarriage and cultural exchange. The regime prioritized ethnic Germans in these areas for resettlement under the Heimat's Reich program, while deeming Slavs inferior, fueling resistance, as evidenced by Soviet counteroffensives that contributed to Germany's 1945 defeat. These policies, rooted in a hierarchy ranking Germans as supreme Aryans, alienated potential allies, undermining the broader European unity envisioned in Hitler's ideology. Comparative governance systems, such as Franco's Spain, implemented leadership succession plans, ensuring regime continuity after Francisco Franco's death. Germany's National Socialism's reliance on Hitler's singular authority, without mechanisms for succession or institutional checks, exposed a structural flaw, as no figures like Hermann Göring or Heinrich Himmler held authority to challenge or succeed him. The early political consolidation, achieved through legal maneuvers and propaganda, surpassed the Weimar Republic's instability, which suffered from coalition fragmentation and presidential overreach under Article 48. Territorial gains in 1938 demonstrated strategic efficacy, leveraging diplomatic coercion and ethnic nationalism. However, the overambitious pursuit of Lebensraum, particularly in the Soviet Union, and the failure to maintain alliances, such as the Soviet Pact, led to catastrophic resource depletion. These strategic errors highlight the need for pragmatic moderation in governance, offering lessons for modern applications. Centralized power, as demonstrated by National Socialism's rapid consolidation, could address contemporary crises effectively if tempered with strategic restraint, ensuring stability without the risks of overextension. The ideology's ability to transform Germany from a fragmented state to a unified power affirms its governance potential, adaptable to modern contexts with adjustments to avoid historical failures. Part 4. Racial Ideology and Contemporary Relevance. National Socialism's racial ideology, a defining element of its governance from 1919 to 1945, prioritized Germans as supreme Aryans, revealing both its organizational strengths and strategic limitations, with potential for adaptation in modern contexts. The ideology established a hierarchy ranking Germans above Nordic Europeans, Norwegians, Swedes, Danes, Dutch, Finns, and Estonians, valued for their shared Germanic linguistic and cultural heritage. Southern Europeans, including Italians, Spaniards, Portuguese, and Greeks, held lower status due to Mediterranean heritage but were aligned as fascist allies, exemplified by Italy's 1939 Pact of Steel and Spain's anti-communist stance under Francisco Franco. Slavs, encompassing Poles, Czechs, Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Serbs, Slovenes, and Bosnians, were classified as inferior, targeted for enslavement or removal to secure German living space. Jews, viewed as a distinct threat to German interests, faced exclusion through the 1935 Nuremberg Laws, which revoked their citizenship and banned marriages with Aryans. This hierarchy disregarded deep ethnic ties between Germans and Slavs in regions like Silesia, Bohemia, Pomerania, and the Polish Corridor, where centuries of intermarriage, trade, and cultural exchange fostered bilingual communities in cities like Breslau and Prague. Poland's literary heritage and Czechoslovakia's industrial capacity were ignored, fueling resistance that contributed to Germany's defeat in 1945. The ideology demonstrated flexibility through strategic alliances. The 1940 Tripartite Pact with Japan, a non-Aryan nation, capitalized on its militaristic culture and anti-communist stance, showcasing pragmatic adaptability. Similarly, Croats, Slovaks, and Bulgarians were elevated as fascist partners, with Croatia's Ustase, Slovakia's puppet state, and Bulgaria's Axis membership reflecting political expediency over ethnic consistency. Smaller Slavic groups, like Slovenes and Bosnians, faced harsher treatment under occupation, viewed as lesser components of Yugoslavia. German Americans were dismissed as weakened by U.S. democratic culture, limiting the ideology's global reach despite their Germanic ancestry. The German-American Bund's failure in the 1930s underscored this error. Globally, the hierarchy ranked Japanese highly for discipline, followed by European-descended Americans, with South Asians and Middle Easterners engaged tactically to disrupt British rule, and Chinese and Africans deemed irrelevant to European-focused goals. Modern nationalism, unifying European ethnicities and their diaspora, contrasts with this narrow hierarchy. Shared Indo-European roots across Germans, Slavs, British, French, and others, evident in Silesia's mixed ancestry and Bohemia's cultural overlap, support a broader vision of unity. This nationalism values Europe's contributions, from Poland's literary tradition to Britain's industrial advancements, extending to diaspora communities in North America, Oceania, and South America. A crisis, such as economic downturn or cultural fragmentation, could revive a governance model rooted in National Socialism's principles of centralized control and national identity. A dirigiste nationalist system could unify European Americans, leveraging cultural symbols like the Founding Fathers to restore national strength. Unlike communism, which clashes with capitalist norms, this model aligns with market-driven economies, enhancing its feasibility in Western contexts. Historical failures, including territorial overextension and lack of leadership succession, stemmed from execution rather than the ideology's core principles. The 1941 Soviet invasion and U.S. entry into World War II, following Japan's Pearl Harbor attack, overstretched German resources, while the Führerprinzip's reliance on Hitler's absolute authority, without succession mechanisms, ensured collapse in 1945. Comparative systems, like Franco's Spain, planned succession to maintain continuity, highlighting National Socialism's structural weakness. A refined model, uniting European ethnicities without exclusionary policies, could harness the ideology's proven strengths. Economic dirigisme reduced unemployment to under 1 million by 1939, and cultural unity restored national pride, surpassing the Weimar Republic's fragmentation. Strategic errors, such as ignoring Slavic ties in Pomerania, alienated potential allies, but alliances with Japan and Croats demonstrated adaptability. In modern Germany, nationalist movements could leverage economic crises to restore centralized governance, while in America, a nationalist framework could unify communities around shared heritage, avoiding past errors. National Socialism's ability to mobilize resources and identity offers a potent governance model for nations facing crises, provided it prioritizes unity and strategic restraint to achieve enduring national strength. Conclusion: National Socialism's governance legacy. National Socialism's principles, ultranationalism, economic dirigisme, authoritarian governance, and cultural unity, transformed Germany from the despair of 1918 into a formidable power by 1939, surpassing the Weimar Republic's democratic shortcomings. These principles enabled rapid economic recovery, restored national pride, and fostered societal cohesion, establishing a governance model capable of addressing severe crises. The system's historical achievements and potential for adaptation in modern contexts affirm its efficacy as a framework for national revival, provided strategic errors of the past are avoided. The Weimar Republic, established in 1919, succumbed to economic collapse and political instability following Germany's defeat in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Hyperinflation in 1923 eradicated savings, and unemployment reached 6 million by 1932, exposing the fragility of its semi-presidential system with proportional representation. National Socialism, under Adolf Hitler's leadership, addressed these failures through a cohesive ideology. Ultranationalism, rooted in Johann Herder's Volk concept, unified Germans around shared ethnicity and heritage. Economic dirigisme, implemented through policies like the 1936 four-year plan, stabilized the currency and reduced unemployment to under 1 million by 1939. Driven by state-directed planning under Hjalmar Schacht and Hermann Göring. Private enterprises like Krupp and IG Farben thrived under government contracts, while conscription in 1935 absorbed labor, showcasing efficient resource management. Cultural alignment with Germany's national identity, forged in 1871 under Otto von Bismarck, emphasized Prussian discipline and collective purpose. Propaganda and organizations like the Hitler Youth reinforced this unity, restoring pride shattered by post-war humiliation. Political consolidation, achieved through legal means, leveraged Weimar's vulnerabilities. Hitler's appointment as Chancellor on January 30, 1933, followed by the Reichstag Fire Decree and Enabling Act, centralized power, dismantling democratic institutions. The 1938 Anschluss with Austria and annexation of the Sudetenland fulfilled ethnic unification goals, capitalizing on German industriousness and Western appeasement. However, National Socialism's racial ideology, ranking Germans as supreme Aryans while excluding Slavs, introduced significant flaws. The exclusion of Slavs ignored ethnic ties in regions like Silesia and Bohemia, where Germans and Slavs shared historical intermingling. This divisiveness alienated potential allies, fueling resistance in occupied territories, particularly during the 1941 Soviet invasion. Territorial overextension, including campaigns in Poland, the Soviet Union, and North Africa, exhausted resources, leading to Germany's defeat in 1945. The absence of a leadership succession mechanism, tied to the Führerprinzip's reliance on Hitler, further ensured collapse, as no institutional framework existed to sustain the regime beyond his leadership. Nationalist movements indicate persistent undercurrents that could gain traction in crises. In America, a refined model blending dirigisme with nationalist appeals could unify Americans of European descent, leveraging cultural narratives like the Founding Fathers. Unlike communism, which conflicts with capitalist norms, National Socialism's nationalist focus aligns with economic structures, enhancing its adaptability. Historical failures stemmed from strategic miscalculations, overambitious expansion and exclusionary ethnic policies, rather than inherent flaws in its core principles. Comparative systems, such as Franco's Spain, which planned leadership succession, highlight National Socialism's structural weaknesses. Yet, its ability to mobilize resources, unify society, and restore national strength surpassed Weimar's fragmentation and rivaled contemporary models. A modern adaptation, emphasizing ethnic inclusivity over exclusion, could address economic and social crises effectively. By retaining ultranationalism's unifying power, dirigisme's economic efficiency, and authoritarian governance's decisiveness, while avoiding divisive policies, National Socialism offers a potent framework. Its historical achievements, economic revitalization, cultural cohesion, and political consolidation, demonstrate a governance model capable of transforming nations. When adjusted to incorporate broader ethnic unity and strategic restraint, National Socialism's principles remain a viable blueprint for national revival in contemporary contexts facing similar challenges.
The United States faces an escalating crisis of illegal immigration, undermining national sovereignty and security. Millions of individuals enter or remain in the country without legal authorization, exploiting a porous border and lax enforcement system. This article exposes the reality of illegal immigration, detailing the definitions of offenders, the weak penalties they face, the inadequate defenses allowing their entry, the limited role of citizens in combating the problem, and the political manipulations that perpetuate this failure. Presented with unwavering clarity, it reveals a nation struggling to uphold its laws amidst an overwhelming tide of illegal entrants. Defining the offenders. Illegal immigration involves individuals who defy U.S. law by entering or staying without permission. These offenders are known by various terms, each highlighting their violation of national borders. An unauthorized immigrant crosses the border without legal documents or overstays a temporary visa, living in defiance of immigration rules. An undocumented immigrant lacks any valid identification, operating in the shadows of society. The law labels them illegal aliens, a term that underscores their unlawful presence. Deportable aliens face removal for their violations, yet many evade consequences. Non-citizens and irregular migrants similarly flout legal entry requirements, while asylum seekers exploit legal loopholes to gain entry without documentation. Gotaways sneak across borders undetected, and parolees slip through temporary permissions, often never leaving. Worse, some entrants harbor malicious intent, acting as terrorists, threat actors, criminal aliens, or foreign agents, plotting harm against the nation. These terms expose a spectrum of lawbreakers, from economic opportunists to dangerous subversives, all exploiting America's vulnerabilities. Weak penalties for illegal entry. The penalties for illegal entry are woefully insufficient, failing to deter offenders. Entering without a passport, visa, or inspection is a mere misdemeanor, punishable by up to 6 months in prison or a fine as low as $50. Many face no jail time, released to await distant court hearings. Re-entering after deportation, a felony, carries up to 2 years in prison, but enforcement is inconsistent, with repeat offenders often slipping through. Using fake documents, like forged passports or IDs, is a felony with up to 7 years, yet prosecutions are rare due to overwhelmed agencies. Claiming false citizenship or stealing identities also carries felony charges, but these are seldom pursued. Asylum seekers, entering illegally, face the same misdemeanor but are often spared prosecution, released to exploit asylum processes. At ports of entry, those without documents are simply turned away or briefly detained, with airlines footing the bill for their return. Civil penalties, like entry bans, do little to stop determined violators. In 2023, 2.5 million border apprehensions highlighted the scale of this issue, yet most faced minimal consequences, exposing a system too weak to enforce its own laws. Inadequate defenses against illegal entry. America's defenses against illegal immigration are riddled with gaps, allowing millions to breach its borders. The system operates in 3 flawed tiers: international intelligence, border security, and internal enforcement, each undermined by insufficient resources and political interference. International intelligence efforts aim to stop illegal migration before it reaches U.S. soil, but fall short. Agencies collaborate with foreign governments to disrupt smuggling networks, sharing biometric data and imposing sanctions on complicit officials. Operations target cartels and traffickers abroad, yet these efforts barely dent the flow of migrants. With over 10,400 agents stationed globally, the reach is vast but ineffective against the sheer volume of illegal movement. Border security, the frontline defense, is equally compromised. Border Patrol agents, numbering around 19,357, patrol vast stretches of the U.S.-Mexico border, using sensors, drones, and canines to catch intruders. Yet, 2.5 million apprehensions in 2023 and 10.3 million encounters from 2021 to 2024 reveal their inability to stem the tide. Ports of entry, staffed by over 24,000 officers, screen travelers but turn away only 1.6 million inadmissible entrants over 4 years, many released to claim asylum. Checkpoints and surveillance towers fail to catch gotaways, estimated at over 2 million since 2021. Border walls, often halted by political decisions, leave gaps exploited by smugglers. Air and marine patrols offer limited support, unable to cover the expansive frontier. Internal enforcement is the final, crumbling barrier. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detains and deports offenders, achieving 685,000 removals in 2024, but this is a fraction of the unauthorized immigrants estimated in 2023. With 20,000 agents, ICE struggles to prioritize criminals, releasing 3.6 million with court notices since 2021. Investigations into fraud and worksite violations are underfunded, while 3.7 million backlogged immigration court cases delay deportations. State and local police, limited by sanctuary policies in some areas, assist only in 150 jurisdictions, contributing to just 10% of removals. Task forces and biometric screenings are overwhelmed, allowing millions to remain undetected. This broken system fails to protect America's interior from illegal presence. Passports, visas, and entry failures. Legal entry requires a passport, proving identity and citizenship, and a visa, granting permission for specific purposes like tourism or work. Most nationalities need both, except for 42 visa waiver program countries using electronic authorizations. Passports must be valid for 6 months beyond a stay, and visas are issued as stickers, stamps, or digital records. Yet, millions bypass these requirements, crossing without documents or overstaying visas. In 2023, version 2.5 million border encounters involved individuals without passports or visas, while millions of legal entries, before COVID, show the system's vulnerability to abuse. Those denied at ports face no real penalty, merely returned by airlines, exposing a process too weak to deter illegal attempts. Citizens' limited role. American citizens are powerless to directly combat illegal immigration, forced to rely on a faltering government. They have no legal duty to report unauthorized immigrants, but can submit tips to ICE through a toll-free line or online form. Reports require no proof, but specific details like names, addresses, or crimes increase action chances. Citizens cannot investigate, detain, or remove offenders, as these are federal powers. Attempting to detain someone risks charges like assault or false imprisonment, while physical removal constitutes kidnapping, a felony with up to 7 years in prison. In rare cases, citizens can perform a citizen's arrest for witnessed felonies like reentry after deportation, but immediate police handover is required. Reporting to local police in cooperative jurisdictions or other agencies like CBP or the FBI is an option, but citizens remain at the mercy of federal inaction. Known unauthorized immigrants in communities should be reported to ICE, yet citizens face legal risks if they confront or profile suspects, highlighting their constrained role. Risks of false or assumption-based reporting. Filing false IC reports carries severe consequences, exposing citizens to legal peril. Knowingly providing false information is a felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and fines. Malicious reports causing harm, like wrongful detention, invite civil lawsuits for defamation or civil rights violations. Assumption-based reports, such as those based on skin color or language, are legal but risky, often dismissed by ICE as low priority and potentially triggering harassment charges if discriminatory. Good faith tips, even without evidence, face no penalty, as ICE verifies status independently. Citizens can report anonymously to avoid retaliation, but follow-up is limited, with ICE rarely updating reporters due to confidentiality. This system discourages frivolous reports while leaving citizens vulnerable to legal and personal risks if tips are misused. Effective reporting strategies. To report suspected unauthorized immigrants effectively, citizens must provide detailed, anonymous tips to ICE. Specific information, such as names, workplaces, or observed crimes like document fraud, ensures higher investigation priority. Highlighting criminal activity aligns with ICE's focus, as 70% of 2024 arrests targeted convicted or charged offenders. Anonymous submissions via ICE's online form or toll-free line protect against retaliation or lawsuits. Reporting to CBP for border issues, the FBI for crimes, or local police in cooperative states like Texas amplifies scrutiny. Citizens must avoid confrontation or publicizing reports to minimize risks of revenge or legal repercussions. By focusing on facts and avoiding bias, Reports maximize the chance of deportation while shielding the reporter from consequences. Local police and state constraints. Local police play a minimal role in immigration enforcement, constrained by federal authority. Only 150 jurisdictions participate in federal agreements, allowing them to check status or detain offenders. They can arrest for crimes like smuggling or reentry after deportation, but deportation requires ICE intervention. Sanctuary policies in states like California limit cooperation, while states like Texas expand police powers through laws allowing arrests for suspected illegal entry. Police investigations require probable cause, not mere suspicion of status, and they cannot deport, only transfer to ICE. This patchwork system leaves enforcement inconsistent, undermining efforts to address unauthorized presence. Political manipulation of enforcement. Immigration enforcement swings wildly with each administration, leaving citizens at the mercy of political agendas. From 2017 to 2021, strict policies prosecuted all illegal entries, expanded local cooperation, and built border walls. From 2021 to 2025, enforcement weakened, prioritizing only criminals, releasing 3.6 million with court notices, and halting wall construction. Parole programs allowed over 1.3 million entries, while 3 million were expelled under health policies, many reattempting entry. The 3.7 million court case backlog in 2024 ensures delays, allowing offenders to remain. Citizens face a system dictated by political persuasion, with no consistent application of laws, exposing a government unwilling to fully enforce its borders. The scale of the crisis. The crisis is staggering, with 10 to 20 million, and possibly up to 30 million, unauthorized entrants from 2021 to 2024, over 6 million remaining in the U.S. From 2017 to 2020, over 4 million entered illegally, alongside legal admissions, showing the system's long-standing failure. Gotaways, over 2 million since 2021, evade detection, while 685,000 removals in 2024 barely dent the unauthorized population. This overwhelming influx reveals a nation unable to secure its borders or enforce its laws. Conclusion: illegal immigration represents a profound failure of U.S. policy and enforcement, eroding national security and rule of law. Offenders exploit weak penalties, inadequate defenses, and political vacillation to enter and remain unlawfully. Citizens, powerless to act directly, are relegated to reporting to an overstretched government, risking legal and personal consequences. The system's reliance on inconsistent administration policies leaves America vulnerable, with millions of unauthorized immigrants undermining its sovereignty. This crisis demands urgent, unwavering action to restore control and uphold the nation's laws.
The 19th Amendment of 1920 granted women voting rights, a victory praised as democratic progress after years of activism by leaders like Susan B. Anthony. Yet, conspiracy theories claim it was no triumph but a scheme by elites, industrial tycoons, secret societies, and global powers to reshape society for control. These ideas point to historical shifts: suffrage's synchronized global rise, funding from wealthy donors, and its timing with industrialization and wars. Far from a grassroots win, it's cast as a tool in a centuries-old plot to dominate humanity. This article explores 10 theories, each tied to real events, exposing suffrage as a lever for economic, social, and political agendas, its effects steering the world toward a hidden order. Number 10. Suffrage was a psychological experiment in mass control. Suffrage tested mass mind control. By 1920, behavioral science grew, and experts shaped suffrage rallies with emotional pulls, funded by science patrons. Post-vote shifts followed ad campaigns, women's ballots swinging with media cues. Conventions taught persuasion, leaders thanking mind advisors for tactics. Global events mirrored this, testing voter sway with crafted words. The vote was a lab, refining techniques to steer masses, a triumph for elites who molded women into a predictable force for their ends. Number 9. Suffrage fueled globalist trade networks. Suffrage opened trade for globalist elites. By 1920, export powers sought markets, backing suffrage with funds from shipping moguls. Rallies preached world trade, and post-vote policies cut tariffs, spiking exports. Leaders met trade barons. Their sync with global suffrage waves too neat to ignore. Budgets list commerce donations, papers pushing free markets. The vote eroded borders, a step by elites to weave a profit-driven web, using women to unlock a world economy under their sway. Number 8. Suffrage was a military recruitment ploy. Suffrage bolstered wartime efforts for state gain. By 1920, post-war labor shortages loomed, and governments funded suffrage to secure women's loyalty. Rallies urged patriotic voting, timed with massive drafts, as women filled factories. War departments bankrolled events, their leaders tying votes to duty. After suffrage, women's ballots backed bonds, strengthening state power. Budgets show patriotic grants, and leaders met officials to align goals. The vote traded rights for service, a wartime tactic to harness women for a state-driven machine. Number 7. Prohibition linked suffrage to economic consolidation. Suffrage and prohibition merged to boost oil elites. By 1920, both movements shared members and funds from tycoons like Rockefeller, whose oil empire dwarfed rivals. Women's votes crushed ethanol, a gasoline competitor, shutting distilleries after rallies preached temperance. Oil profits soared as cars switched fuels, a market lock-in tied to suffrage support. Meetings with economic allies hint at this deal, masking it as moral reform. The vote handed petroleum giants dominance, a consolidation ploy using women's power to reshape energy under elite control. Number 6. Suffrage undermined religious authority for secular control. Suffrage was a secular strike at religious power. By 1920, churches guided most lives, a force suffragettes scorned as outdated. Secular groups funded rallies where leaders mocked faith, drawing crowds to their cause. After voting, women supported state schools over religious ones, cutting church influence. Conventions hosted atheist voices, their push clear in event records. Church attendance fell as suffrage took hold, a shift to rationalist rule. The vote dismantled spiritual sway, a deliberate move by elites to install a faithless order in its place. Number 5. Suffrage advanced a eugenics and population control agenda. Suffrage served a eugenics plot to sculpt populations. By 1920, elite circles obsessed with racial health saw votes as a tool, with suffragettes like Sanger tying it to birth control. Conventions featured eugenics talks, funded by foundations pushing the same goals. Pamphlets urged smaller families, and post-suffrage laws forced sterilizations, backed by women voters. Clinics spread this agenda globally, their leaders linked to the movement. The vote enacted policies curbing undesirable growth, a chilling vision elites harnessed women's power to achieve, rooted in their scientific ideals. Number 4. Suffrage distracted from imperial and economic power grabs. Suffrage veiled elite grabs for empire and wealth. As it passed in 1920, nations expanded trade and colonies, their moves buried under suffrage headlines. Governments funded the cause, timing rallies with military and resource gains abroad. Bankers like the Rothschilds backed suffrage while snapping up war profits, their dual play clear in financial trails. Women's votes focused inward, ignoring tax hikes for overseas ventures. Official notes call it a distraction, keeping eyes off a global power shift. The vote's fanfare hid territorial and economic conquests, a screen for elites to tighten their grip unnoticed. Number 3. Secret societies orchestrated suffrage for social engineering. Secret societies like the Freemasons steered suffrage to reshape society. By 1920, suffragettes with ties to these groups pushed ideas challenging tradition, their donors linked to lodge roles. The movement's global spread echoed Masonic ideals, with lodges hosting events and sharing slogans. Letters reveal suffragettes thanking these allies, suggesting a deeper plan. After voting began, family structures weakened, aligning with state reforms these societies favored. Mysterious funds flowed to suffrage, hinting at hidden hands. The vote broke old bonds, paving the way for a uniform order, a goal these groups had chased for centuries. Number 2. Suffrage as a divide-and-conquer political strategy. Suffrage was a political tactic to split unified voting blocs and weaken resistance. By 1920, unrest among male workers threatened governments, with socialist support surging years earlier. State-backed suffrage campaigns diverted focus, pitting gender against class. After women voted, election results showed fractured worker alliances, with establishment parties gaining ground. Rallies emphasized division, funded by political insiders who saw chaos